Recording in progress.
Madam Clerk, the time is 5:45 p.m. I call to order this special closed session of City Council Management of Emeryville Services Authority. This meeting is being conducted in person at 1330 Park Avenue here in Emeryville, California. The City Council welcomes comments including criticism about the policies, procedures, programs, or services of the city or of the acts or missions of the City Council. Speakers shall not use threatening, profane, or abusive language which disrupts, disturbs, or otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of City Council, successor agency, management of Emeryville Services Authority, or related meeting. The city is committed to maintaining a workplace free of unlawful harassment and is mindful that city staff regularly attend council meetings. Discriminatory statements or conduct that would potentially violate the Fair Employment and Housing Act, such as statements or conduct that is hostile, intimidating, oppressive, or abusive, is per se disruptive to a meeting and shall not be tolerated. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Councilmember Bouders?
Here.
Councilmember Carr?
Present.
Councilmember Pryforce is absent. Vice Mayor Mora?
Present.
And Mayor Welch.
Here. Item 3 is ex parte communications. Members, please review the agenda. Does anyone have any ex parte communications to report? No. Item 4 is public comment on closed session items. Any member of the public wishing to make a comment on the closed session items can do so now. Seeing no one here with us, public comment is now closed. Madam Clerk, we will be taking items 5 and 6 and their sub-items in closed session and will report out. The time is 5:46 p.m. We are adjourned to closed session.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
Time is 6:22 PM. We have returned from closed session. Mr. City Attorney, do you mind reporting out of closed session?
Thank you, Mayor Welch. There was no reportable action taken in closed session today.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. The time is still 6:22 PM. This meeting is adjourned. Next meeting starts at 6:30.
Recording stopped.
Madam Clerk, the time.
Recording stopped.
Oh, stopped? It said stopped.
Recording in progress.
Okay, thank you. The time is 6:30 PM. Madam Clerk, I call to order this special meeting of the Emeryville City Council. This meeting is being conducted in person at 1330 Park Avenue here in Emeryville, California. The City Council welcomes comments, including criticism about the policies, procedures, programs, or services of the city or the acts or missions of the City Council. Speakers shall not use threatening, profane, or abusive language which disrupts, disturbs, or otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of a City Council, successor agency, management of Emeryville Service Authority, or related meeting. The city is committed to maintaining a workplace free of unlawful harassment and is mindful that city staff regularly attend council meetings. Discriminatory statements or conduct that would potentially violate the Fair Employment and Housing Act, such as statements or conduct that is hostile, intimidating, oppressive, or abusive, is per se disruptive to a meeting and will not be tolerated. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Councilmember Bouders?
Here.
Councilmember Carr?
Present.
Councilmember Pryforce?
Here.
Vice Mayor Mora?
Present.
And Mayor Welch.
Here. Item 3 is approval of the final agenda. Members, I recommend us changing the order just a bit, just in interest of being more efficient. I recommend us taking the bike and pedestrian appointments first, second, economic development advisory, third, Parks and Rec, fourth, budget advisory, fifth, Commission on Aging, sixth, Housing Committee, and seventh, public art. Does anyone,
No objection.
any objections to that change? Okay, no, yes, I move.
I have a question. In terms of the change, why that specific change? Because I would think that I'd look at it more of seniority, and so since the Commission of Aging is, are more senior members, and I would place them as first.
This is just for the committees that have a smaller amount of applicants, so we can move faster.
Got it.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Councilmember Bouders?
Aye.
Councilmember Carr?
Aye.
Councilmember Pryforce?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Mora?
Aye.
And Mayor Welch.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Item 3 is, item 4 is ex parte communications. Members, do any of you have any ex parte communications to report for this agenda? Member Pryforce?
Yes, I just had a conversation with John Suter. Yes.
Anyone else? I received an email from John Suter as well.
Likewise.
Anyone else?
I received the same email.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Item 5 is public comment for items not on the agenda. Any member of the public wishing to make a comment for items not on this agenda can do so now for 2 minutes. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Roger Bash. I am a business owner in Emeryville, have been here for 40 years. And the last 30 years in the Park Overlay District. I was on the district committee for 8 years. And my firm rebuilt the dais, so it wasn't quite so high. That was my claim to fame for here. But I've noticed that when we put this together, the district working on this, the city offered to install the landscaping and to maintain the landscaping over the course of, into the future. And I've noticed that it is not kept up, its maintenance of this area. And I did a survey this weekend. There are 55 beds that need to be replanted. They're just sort of wastelands. I've done a survey with photographs and marked it out street by street. But I also came to find that there were 25 to 30 trip hazards just in the district. I did it from Hollis Street down to the end to the plaza there. And this was brought home to me, the importance of this, in that last week, the controller from my firm who's been with me for 30 years, 75-year-old, very spry, very active woman, tripped on one of the grates that was out of alignment because tree roots had pushed it up and nobody had dealt with it. And she fell, broke her wrist, dislocated her wrist, and fortunately she didn't hit her head, but spent 12 hours in the hospital and is out of work. At this point, we wish her well and we wish her back. So I would just, I'm not sure that this is exactly, the right time or who to bring it to, but I would like to bring it to your attention that there's a need for attention to be paid on this.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Any other member of the public wishing to make public comment for items not on the agenda at this time? Seeing and hearing none, public comment is now closed. And on to the show. Action items is item 6. Item 6.1, we will not be taking this evening. There is no longer any applicant for the Planning Commission. And so we'll be moving on to item 6.2. And item 6.2.1 is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Emeryville appointing business representatives or community members to serve on the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee for terms commencing July 1st, 2024 and ending June 30th, 2026, and amending the fiscal year 24-25 local roster of boards and commissions. Okay. At this time, members, we will open up the item for public comment for anyone that would like to come and make public comment on the bicycle and pedestrian appointments. Anyone here from public comment on the item? No? Public comment is now closed. Members, I turn to you for deliberation for the appointments. Member Bowders.
Motion to appoint Jeffrey Banks and Jordan Wax to terms on the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee commencing July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2026, and to amend the roster.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Councilmember Bouders?
Aye.
Councilmember Carr?
Aye.
Councilmember Pryforce?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Mora?
Aye.
And Mayor Welch.
Aye. Thank you, members. Up next, we will take item 6.2.4, resolution of the City Council of the City of Emeryville appointing business representatives, a large business representative, nonprofit workforce development organization representative, a resident, small business representative to serve on the Economic Development Advisory Committee for terms July 1st, 2024, ending June 30th, 2026, and amending the local roster of boards and commissions accordingly. At this time, I will call for public comment on this item. Any member? Oh, is anyone here for those appointments? Yes. Okay. Would anyone like to, I would like to call for public comment at this time. Any member of the public that would like to comment on the Economic Development Advisory Committee appointments can do so now for 2 minutes. No? Okay, public comment is now closed. Sir, I invite you up to introduce yourself and make a case for yourself.
Good evening. My name is Michael Reed.
Oh, Madam Clerk, could you please put 2 minutes on the timer?
I'll make it shorter than that, I promise. First of all, thank you for your consideration regarding this appointment. I'm a hotelier with over 20 years' experience across several markets and brands, both in the Bay Area, Atlanta, Georgia, and Orlando, Florida. As the current general manager of the Hyatt House here in Emeryville since 2021, I've had the opportunity to see and experience firsthand the efforts of the city in regards to economic development. And in applying for this committee, I hope to receive the chance to provide input and collaborate with other members to further the city's vision and continued growth-related efforts. I maintain a strong commitment to seeing the city of Emeryville continue to thrive and look forward to doing what I can to help develop and support its continued initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you. And there are no other applicants, correct? Here? All right. Members, I turn to you for a deliberation on the appointments. Member Bowders?
I have a question for the clerk. Madam Clerk, do you have the attendance records from the meetings before you tonight? In the past year?
No, I do not.
Okay. Who's the staff person for this committee? Is it Chad? Chad, is the incumbent Javier Contreras typically at these meetings?
Yes.
Okay, I'll make a motion to appoint Javier Contreras as the nonprofit representative for a term ending in 2026, and Michael Reed as the business representative for a term ending in 2026.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Madam Clerk, we have a motion and a second. The roll, please.
Councilmember Bouders?
Aye.
Councilmember Carr?
Aye.
Councilmember Pryforce?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Mora?
Aye.
And Mayor Welch.
Aye. Congratulations. Moving along to item 6.2.6, resolution of the City Council of the City of Emeryville appointing committee members to serve on the Parks and Recreation Committee for terms commencing July 1st, 2024, and ending June 30th, 2026, and amending local roster of boards and commissions accordingly. Are there any applicants here from, hi, Gail. At this time, I'll call for public comment on item 6.2.6. Any member of the public wishing to make comment on item 6.2.6 can do so now. Seeing and hearing none, public comment is now closed. Gail, I invite you up to state your case for 2 minutes.
Good evening. I am interested on staying on the Parks and Recreation Committee. I've been on since the beginning of the committee, and I think we're doing good work, and I'm very passionate about parks, and I would like to see the work continue. And I also support member Andrea Brewer for her appointment as well. And if there's any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Members, any questions for the applicant? No? Thank you, Gail. And Madam Clerk, I believe we have a comment
Yes,
from
Mayor.
one of the applicants?
Mayor and Council, we asked attendees who had applied that could not attend tonight if they wanted to make a comment to send in their written comments, and I'm going to read one that we received from Andrea Eggers. My name is Andy Eggers, and I would like to be more involved in Emeryville and help shape the city to encourage more community connections. I've lived adjacent or in Emeryville for the past 5 years, discovering the city while visiting my son in Oakland in 2019. Staying at an Airbnb on Vallejo Street, I went for a walk and fell in love with the area. The industrial field, the parks, the greenway, the water, the shopping, and the proximity to everything. Here was a place I could live my urban pedestrian lifestyle dream. During the pandemic, I saw the streets of Emeryville come to life with people seeking the safe outdoors. I noticed all the neighborly interactions that were taking place, conversations, outdoor gatherings, notes and packages left at people's doors. It was uplifting to observe these connections taking place. I want to make sure the silver lining of the pandemic continues in Emeryville by providing more spaces and activities for the residents to connect. Common areas, outdoor spaces, and activity centers provide the opportunity for this to happen. Parks and recreation are key amenities for the city to facilitate more community involvement. I have also benefited from a few of the current offerings the city supports. I swim laps at the ECCL and exercise at their fitness center. I joined the Emeryville Senior Center for the express purpose to play pickleball, discovering a community of fun and supportive people that became a great social outlet. I've owned my Emeryville condo for 2 years, and I'm hoping to give back to the city in a more purposeful role. This is why I would like to be part of the Emeryville Parks and Rec Committee.
Thank you. All right, members, I turn to you for deliberation on the appointments.
I'll make a motion to appoint all 3 applicants, Andrea Brewer, Gail Donaldson, and Andy Eggers, to the 3 terms for 2026.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Councilmember Bouders?
Aye.
Councilmember Carr?
Aye.
Councilmember Pryforce?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Mora?
Aye.
And Mayor Welch.
Aye. We'll now go to item 6.2.2, resolution of the City Council of the City of Emeryville appointing a business representative and residents to serve on the Budget Advisory Committee for terms commencing July 1st, 2024 and ending June 30th, 2026. Do we have any of the applicants here with us? Wonderful. At this time, I'll call for public comment on item 6.2.2. Any member of the public wishing to make comment on item 6.2.2 can do so now for 2 minutes. Seeing and hearing none, public comment is now closed. I invite our applicant up to speak for 2 minutes and make their case.
Hi, I'm Dave Kritzberg, and I've been on the Budget Advisory Committee for a couple of years. I was chair this past year, and I'd like to request to be reappointed and also request on behalf of Fran Quittel and Sam Feldman. Sam's been a really good addition. For example, this year we were presented some numbers for the Alameda Fire expenditure, and we asked for more information, and then we got to talk to I think it was whoever the guy was in charge from the fire department, from the county fire department, and Sam noticed that we were possibly being overcharged, and then through help from the city manager, we managed to negotiate a slightly better rate for the next year or the next 2-year contract. So I feel like we're doing some good, and I'd like to continue that effort. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, did you ever hear anything from
We
any
received
other
a
applicant?
written comment from Sam Feldman.
Okay.
He is, I believe, out of the country, yes. Thank you to the Emeryville Mayor and City Council for my previous appointment to the Budget Advisory Committee, and I apologize for not being there in person today. I am on a pre-planned international trip. I've served on the Budget Advisory Committee since November 2023 and lived in Emeryville after purchasing a home here in August 2023. I've learned a lot on the committee and hopefully I have contributed useful advice. I hope to continue to bring my education and experience to this committee for Emeryville. In addition to a master's in public administration, I taught college-level public budgeting courses when I lived in Arizona. I'm also the manager of budget for East Bay Municipal Utility District, the business or public agency for which I serve as a representative in Emeryville. At East Bay MUD, my team and I manage a $1.3 billion annual budget between both the water and wastewater systems, both of which serve Emeryville residents. East Bay MUD also bills on behalf of Emeryville's wastewater collection system. Additionally, my background includes working for the rating agency Moody's Investor Service, where I rated the bonds for cities, counties, school districts, and other local governments. I also previously worked for the City of Phoenix in the City Manager's Office. I hope I can continue to bring those years of public service to advise the Mayor and City Council through the Budget Advisory Committee. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Were there any other comments submitted for any of the other applicants?
No, Mayor.
All right. Members, I turn to you for deliberation on the appointments.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Fran Quittel and David Kritzberg as resident appointees to the Budget Advisory Committee and Samuel Feldman as the business representative for terms commencing July 1st, 2024 and ending June 30th, 2026, and to amend the roster accordingly.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Councilmember Bouders?
Aye.
Councilmember Carr?
Aye.
Councilmember Pryforce?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Mora?
Aye.
And Mayor Welch.
Aye. Item 6.2.3, resolution of the City Council, of the City of Emeryville, appointing residents and a 94608 resident to serve on the Commission on Aging for terms commencing July 1st, 2024, and ending June 30th, 2026, and amending the local roster and boards and commissions accordingly. Do we have any applicants here with us? 1, 2, 3, was it 4? Or is there 5? Just 4? Okay. At this time, I will take public comment for item 6.2.3. Any member of the public wishing to make a comment on item 6.2.3 can do so now for 2 minutes.
Just wanted to state for the record that I recommended strongly that all applicants for the COA attend to demonstrate their commitment. Most of the people here are either current members or seeking reappointment or past members seeking reappointment. I advised them that I had sent you a letter even though, John, you may not have received it. I got to check with your email address. But I feel this commitment is something that we used to have before COVID, and I think we have all reason to return to it. Basically, quality in, quality out. And I want to thank all the applicants that have come today because they represent quality. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the public wishing to make comment on this item? Seeing and hearing none, public comment is now closed. I invite interested applicants to come up and speak for 2 minutes. Please.
I'm sort of between needing these and not, so I'll have to struggle a little bit. Good evening, everybody. I hope that you and yours are all safe and well. I guess now I need these. I'm Walt Watman. I'm here this evening to say a few words about my time on the COA and my request to be reappointed. I need to take this off if I'm going to see you and put it on if I'm going to see the paper here. So. I've received just as much as I gave on the committee, and the experience continues to be rewarding. There's much to be done to serve the needs of our seniors and, for that matter, all the residents of Emeryville, and I'm eager to continue to serve. My focus remains on the importance of connection, by which I mean the experience of being and feeling seen by another. That runs through my efforts on the committee, and for that matter, in general, and I'm looking forward to seeing what this next year or two will bring. I welcome any of your comments or questions.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions for the applicant? No? Thank you very much.
Sure.
Any other applicants interested in speaking? Yes, that's welcome.
Hi, Honorable Council members and Mayor. Thank you for entertaining my application. I'm Beth Esperanza Rosales, and I've come here to seek reappointment to be a commissioner for the COA. And I think, as some of you know, I've been a resident here at Emeryville for about 6.5 years. And I served on the commission up until September of last year, and unfortunately, I had just tremendous family obligations. And now that has lightened up a bit. And so I thought, let me get back and serve the city once more, officially. And I'm an active member of the Emeryville Senior Center. I deliver groceries for Mercy Bags every first and third Thursdays for homebound seniors. I was also quite active in getting the crosswalk built about 3 years ago for that mid-San Pablo block project. Thank you very much for those of you who were on the council at that time. And I'm very interested not only in the issues of concern for seniors, but actually I'm really interested in developing some kind of a relationship where seniors' contributions to the city go beyond than just wanting affordable housing, et cetera. So that is really my interest. I'm 72 years old, and I thought I better get it together and make some contribution. But more importantly, I also serve on the board of a community healthcare clinic, the Asian Health Services, where we are going to establish a $50 million PACE program for seniors in Alameda County. So I'm quite interested, and I hope that you'll take my application positively. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any, oh, Beth, just 1 second. Beth? Okay. Any questions for Beth? Oh, no, there's no questions. Thank you so much. Oh, you had one? Member Pryforth, did you have a question? No. Okay. Any other applicants? Yes, please. Madam Clerk, could you set the timer for 2 minutes?
Good evening, everyone. I'm excited to be here. I am applying to, for another period of working on the Commission for Aging. When I was appointed last time, I was finishing up someone else's term, so I've only had a couple of months on the commission, and mostly all I've done is listen, but I'm learning a lot. And I'm interested in being on the Commission for Aging for several reasons, mostly because I'm aging, and I live in senior housing in Emeryville, and I love it here. My retirement dream was a houseboat in Sausalito, but I always tell everybody that senior housing in Emeryville is close enough. It's so beautiful here, and I can still get to the water. And, I was raised living all over the world. I don't have any ties to any particular area in the world because I have lived so many different places. But I very much value diversity, and there is a lot of diversity in Emeryville, and especially at the Emeryville where I live. And I'm interested in getting some of the immigrants and other people who live in Emeryville and elsewhere in Emeryville active in the community, because I think that people who, for whom English is their second language, are overlooked sometimes in the work that they could help with. So that is one of my primary interests. But I have a lot of business experience. I've owned my own business. Excuse me. I've worked in nursing homes.
Thank you. Any other applicant wishing to speak? Last call. Madam Clerk, do we have any written comments from applicants?
Yes. This is from Renee Turlet. During my current tenure, we focused on the importance of the area agencies on aging for care and aid services. The state of the current systems demands a lot of individual interventions for which recent tech evolutions are being enhanced. Additionally, we are to expect the care will involve more non-medical tech know-how, which is involved in tracking and networking with international users to be at the edge of innovations. It is very interesting and useful work which will be valuable to the many new skills needed for the special assistance to seniors.
Thank you. Members, I now turn to you for deliberation for the appointments.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Sharon Penning, Beth Rosales, and Walt Waltman to the 3 respective terms as residents ending in 2026.
Member Pryforce?
I actually have a comment. So I would probably more than likely second that motion. That the Renee's message was a bit confusing, and as someone who has emphasized a whole lot of race, equity, and class representation on city council, on our committees, that unfortunately, unlike our surrounding cities, we don't have a commission or a committee for race and equity in Emeryville. And so this is the best thing we got, which is to appoint folks who reflect the diversity, whether that is liberal Democrat, whether that's someone who's well off or someone who is struggling to pay the bills. That we want to make sure that that diversity is represented, and to have a woman of color like Beth, who has fought so hard when it comes to social justice and equity issues in the Bay Area, to return to the Commission on Aging rather than Renee Turlet, that's what I support. So I like to second the motion for Sharon Penning, Beth Rosales, and Walt Watman to continue and to fill these slots. Yeah.
Madam Clerk, the roll, please. So,
Just a brief comment. So I know Walt and Beth, and I'm grateful that you're both here and ready to serve again. And I'm reading the applications. I found out that a fellow Grand Rapidian is on the commission. I didn't realize that. You went to Grand Valley State and we're on the Grand Rapids City Council. You were my council member probably back in my childhood. So I'm very happy to vote for you tonight. It's cool.
the roll, please, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Bouders?
Aye.
Councilmember Carr?
Aye.
Councilmember Pryforce?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Mora?
Aye.
And Mayor Welch.
Aye. All right, item 6.2.5, the resolution of the City Council of the City of Emeryville appointing committee members to serve on the Housing Committee for terms commencing July 1st, 2024, and ending June 30th, 2026, and amending local roster of boards and commissions accordingly. Are there any applicants here? Wonderful. At this time, I'll call for a public comment on item 6.2.5. Any member of the public wishing to make a comment on the item can do so now for 2 minutes. No, Vicky? Oh, I thought you were getting up. Okay, seeing and hearing none, public comment is now closed. I invite interested applicants to come to the podium to speak for 2 minutes to make their case.
Hello,
Good evening.
my name is Sharice Duckworth, and I have served one term on the Housing Committee. I am a homeowner and resident of the city of Emeryville for 22 years. I have served in my professional capacity as a project manager, developing affordable housing for seniors, individuals, and families with annual household incomes below the area median income, developing rental, multifamily, as well as home ownership opportunities for lower income individuals. I wish to continue to serve on the Housing Committee and offer professional expertise and also feedback as a resident and a long-term resident of the city of Emeryville in the 94608.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions for the applicant before she departs? No? Thank you very much. Any other interested applicants?
Good evening.
Good evening,
My
Ellen.
name is Ellen Strauss, and I currently serve on the Emeryville Senior Center Friends Board as Vice President. I also serve on the Commission on Aging as Vice Chairman. I've lived in the city of Emeryville since 2012. I am a recipient of affordable housing, and it has saved my life because if I didn't have it, I don't know where I would be or what I would be able to do. I want to give back and help to see how I can help people who are seniors and families to get into affordable housing. And I'll do everything in my power to help do that. So I would like to consider me. And if you do, fine. If you don't, so be it. Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Ellen. Any other interested applicants wishing to speak? No? All right, members, I turn to you for deliberation on appointments.
Mayor, we received one.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. There was a comment, written comment. My apologies.
Yes, and I'm sorry, Ms. Strauss also submitted a comment, but I won't read it since she made it this evening. This is from Matthew Solomon. Dear City Council, I am writing regarding my application to serve another term on Emeryville's Housing Committee. I unfortunately am unable to be at the June 18th meeting in person as I'm out of town. I have greatly enjoyed serving on the Housing Committee for the past year, including the opportunity to learn about and contribute to Emeryville's policies and programs, such as the First Time Home Buyers Program and the Pro-Housing Accessibility Improvements Program. The committee is an exciting place to grapple with the variety of housing challenges the city is facing, a general lack of housing leading to high prices across the entire Bay Area, residents that want to age in place from being single to starting families to becoming seniors, and a warming climate and imperative to reduce emissions. I know city staff has a lot already planned for the year, and two things I would prioritize in another term are exploring the pros and cons of a rental registry as a way to provide renters with more information and agency, and how to aid the transition to lower emissions buildings, such as installing EV chargers, batteries, and using lower carbon building materials and methods. One additional note, one of my priorities is giving others the opportunity to participate, and I may end up attending the meetings as a member of the public just because I'm interested and otherwise engaged in the city. So to the extent that there are other qualified and interested candidates, I'll be happy to cede my seat to them.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Members, I will now turn to you to deliberate on the appointments for the Housing Committee. Member Pryforce.
So I don't know whether this is to be addressed to Madam Clerk or to the City Manager, but I believe in our discussion today that it's a little unclear when we have members on committees who sit on other committees, and I think that that's something that we should make that a little bit more apparent. I think that when my remarks around diversity, I'd like to see more diversity. If you look at, so we have this little sheet to guide us, and in the sheet for the EDAC, it clearly states that we have one business representative, a large business representative, nonprofit representative, and the reason why we have that is to create a diversity of views on our EDAC. Our current makeup on the Housing Committee, there isn't one person on the Housing Committee who is a BMR resident.
That's not true. That's not true.
Oh, you're a BMR renter? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so you're a BMR homeowner. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes. So having a BMR homeowner and having a BMR renter, I believe would increase the level of views and diversity that can be added to some of these discussions. At the last Housing Committee meeting, we had someone speak on their experiences dealing with a landlord in Emeryville and some of their business models that they felt made their experience as a renter, as a BMR renter in Emeryville, difficult. And so having a BMR homeowner, having a BMR tenant, I believe that is something that we should emphasize in the future. With Matthew Solomon and Ellen Strauss, they both are on multiple committees. I believe that Matthew Solomon is on the bike ped, the BPAC committee, and Ellen Strauss has shared that she's also on the Commission of Aging. But if I would have had to choose between one or the other, I would emphasize Ellen Strauss. I believe that she would add a more senior voice on the committee, and especially with her comments emphasizing affordable housing. I think that definitely needs to be present at the on this committee. And so once again, emphasizing a diversity of voices and perspectives. But I think that we really should take a look at if we can require certain seats in the EDAC, we should be also be able to require certain seats on committees like housing to make sure that there is a diversity of representation that's there. And if anyone asks, well, why is that important? Well, BMR tenant protections haven't necessarily been passed in the history of Emeryville. And so that's one of the reasons why it's important to have that kind of representation on committees like these. Thank you.
Member Bowders.
Thank you. So a couple things. I agree with Councilmember Pryforce on the importance of diversity and representation. I'm really happy you applied, Ellen. I was on the Housing Committee over a decade ago, and at the time I joined, I was the only renter on the committee. So I agree with Councilmember Pryforce about the diversity of voices and experiences. Being a BMR homeowner or being a BMR tenant is really important. Being a tenant is really important to providing a really just and visible discussion in the space of housing. Just as a place of historical context, not to take sides on the issue, we had the same kind of stuff that you see in the EDAC, where we had a minimum number of renters, we had a minimum number of homeowners. We actually, I think at one point there was even a housing provider was required. And it was similar to the Parks Committee. There was a dog owner, a planning commissioner, a parent. There were these designations. And what the council learned 8 to 12 years ago was that they had a very hard time meeting those designations. Those designations became very hard to fill, and we actually had committees not meeting at all. So there's a balance to be had in that discussion if we were to do that again in the future, just to ensure we don't overburden our process to a point where we paralyze the committee's ability to do any work. So I do support those things. I read the, Madam Clerk, I read the draft resolution as having 4 vacancies. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and I saw and I heard from 4 people tonight. I'd be happy, Madam Mayor, to make a motion to appoint Sharice Duckworth, Brooks Jessup, Ellen Strauss, and Matthew Solomon, all of whom have served on or are willing to serve on and appeared tonight or sent in a statement to this Housing Committee for terms commencing now and ending June 2026.
Any other comments, or is there a second?
I'll second.
Member Pryforce.
So with Holden Reyes, because we don't have that kind of information, does Holden Reyes currently sit on any committee?
I don't know offhand.
Okay.
I don't believe so.
Okay. And so that's why I would suggest Holden Reyes over Matthew Solomon, because Matthew Solomon already sits on a committee. I mean, and it would be fair, since Holden Reyes isn't an incumbent, that they have the opportunity to serve on the committee.
Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
May I ask a question? Was that a
A
motion?
substitute motion?
Are you making a substitute motion?
No, I'm not making a substitute motion. I'm making that suggestion.
So no, it wasn't a substitute motion. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Okay, on the original motion, Councilmember Bowders?
Aye.
Councilmember Carr?
Aye.
Councilmember Pryforce?
Nay.
Vice Mayor Mora?
Aye.
And Mayor Welch?
Aye. Which brings us to item 6.2.7, resolution of the City Council of the City of Emeryville appointing business representatives or residents to serve on the Public Art Committee for terms commencing July 1st, 2024 and ending June 30th, 2026, and amending the local rosters of boards, commissions, and committees accordingly. Are there applicants here for the Public Art? 1, 2, 3. Anyone else? Okay, 3. All right, wonderful. At this time, I'll call for public comment on item 6.2.7. Any member of the public wishing to make comment on this item can do so now for 2 minutes. Please join us on the podium.
Thank you. I'm Celeste Burrows. I'm a resident and a former member of the BPAC and also the Commission on Aging. I'm here to recommend Salma Arastu for a position on the Public Art Advisory Committee. I've known Salma as a neighbor, as an artist, and as a person who has a passion for bringing together people and communities, no matter how diverse they are and how different other experiences. In fact, Salma has formed and led discussion groups that are made up of people of vastly different backgrounds and experiences for the purpose of them getting to know one another on a deeper level. And Salma, in her art, also has a passion for bringing together people and nature, and for connecting certain aspects of nature with other aspects of nature. From my own perspective as a resident and as an observer of art, I've really appreciated the theme of we are all connected. This is a theme that has been very strong in much of Salma's art. In fact, connectivity and facilitating connections in Emeryville was a passion of mine while I served on the BPAC and the COA, and I still look for ways to continue growing that connectivity here in Emeryville. And it's a good perspective to include in our public art discussions and decision-making. Salma is also an extraordinarily accomplished artist over many decades, with exhibitions, publications, and presentations done nationwide and even worldwide. So I enthusiastically recommend Salma Arastu for appointment to Emeryville's Public Art Advisory Committee. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any other member of the public wishing to make comment on this item? Yes. No, not public comment. Oh, all right. All right, seeing and hearing none, public comment is now closed. I now invite any interested applicant to come and speak on their behalf for 2 minutes. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Rick Tejada Flores. Thank you for having me here, council members. I'm a current member of the Public Art Committee who would like to be reappointed. I've served on off and on for several years, and it's very important. And I think, given the council's actions, that there is an increased interest and emphasis on public art with the expansion of 2 initiatives, the Center for the Arts Project and the Rotten City Cultural District. The Public Art Committee has had informal involvement in those things, but I would like to see them expand that role, and I would make a suggestion or a thought that the council consider amending the ordinance to have the Public Art Committee involved significantly in all operations of the city instead of just the 1% of art administration. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions for the applicant? Member Pryforce?
Could you explain that a little further?
Well,
didn't follow.
we're informed of the activities on these new projects, for example, but we don't have any official role in them. For example, it's hard to tell exactly where the projects are because we don't have official progress reports or input on activities. We're involved in one project of the Emeryville, the Rotten City Cultural Arts District, involved with the reprinting of the map with cultural sites. But it would be helpful for the committee to know what the total plan is when they're planning events, and get more directly involved, not to control it, but to have input. You know, this is the only city organization that has any specific focus on the arts. So I think, given that, it would be appropriate for us to have an official role in all arts activities of the city.
Can you give me another example of how? Like, for example, I had just had a conversation with the city manager. I was talking to a couple of folks at Watergate because of the park where the fence was smashed in by a car, and we were suggesting something to prevent cars from smashing the fence. And so we said, okay, well, maybe we can some bullards or something. And then we said, well, because it's a park and the children will be there, we can like decorate it, and we can talk to the Public Art Committee about decorating it. And I think that even with the Public Safety Committee, we talked about having, because we need to do a better job warning people about belongings that are in cars, that they come to Emeryville, they think, Emeryville's so safe, and they leave their car unattended with their items. And if there was a more artistic way, rather than a sign that says, don't leave things in your car, something that sort of said, hey, could you not do that? And if there was a more artistic or a visual way of being able to say that. And so I think we are trying to find different ways for the Public Art Committee to have a reach across the city, because you all are so important to just the history and the nature of Emeryville. And so hearing that there may be ways that we could possibly deepen that relationship is fascinating to me, and that's something that we can probably talk about on the side. But thank you for applying to remain as an incumbent.
To clarify, our official role is to administer the 1% for Art Fund. So it would be helpful if the council agreed on an expanded role. I'm not sure what art can do to warn people about crashes, but it's something we could think about and talk about, and a lot of other things.
You got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
Next applicant?
Hi, my name is Vicki Sewell. I'm a public artist. I've lived here and worked here about 40 years. I've served on the Public Art Committee for at least 5 years. And it's fun, and I'm honored to do it. I love to represent it. And I'd like to say that we'd have to change our bylaws. I'm on the Rotten City Cultural District Committee, and I'd like to know more what's happening on the Public Art Committee too, but right now we're just take care of the 1% for Art project, but we could have those two active other projects report or at least be informed by those projects. Now, if there's a space that you want to put public art in, like come to the committee. We love to put art, we just don't have spaces. Generally, we don't have a place to put the art. So we'd like some more space. So that would be great if the committee could change their bylaws, update their bylaws, and become more active in a couple other areas. Thank you.
Any questions for the applicant? Oh, Vicki?
Sure.
Member Pryforce?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, that's twice that someone's mentioned a change. It's like a little revolution happening in the public art
Only a
committee.
little bit, because it's not clear what our bylaws are, really. That's the thing. And maybe, I don't know if we have written bylaws. I'd like to know if we did. So it's exciting, because there is a big budget at the public art. We have a big budget amount. Developers have donated a lot of money. Oh, well, they've not donated. They had to put it in as a % for art. So it's an exciting time. We have money to do projects. But it's better if we know what our bylaws are. So, and we're excited about the Art Center. And the Rotten City Cultural Center is going to have a new website. There's going to be a big calendar. There's going to be so many events. And it just hasn't been publicized yet, but it's coming.
Thank you, Vicki. Any other applicants? Yes, please.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mike Haggerty. I've been a resident here for 7 years or so. So I'm a first-time applicant for the Public Arts Commission. And moving here has been like one of the best decisions we've ever made. And a big part of that is the creativity that comes through in the city and what the Public Arts Committee has done. And so I think it's time to maybe like step up and kind of like, do what I can, kind of like, give my part back. Professionally, I'm a creative director, been a creative director for 18 years. I lead large kind of design agencies, marketing agencies. A big part of what I do is managing large scoped creative projects, concepting, budgeting, scoping, the whole kind of like 9 yards. So hopefully I can take some of that experience, that professional experience, to the Public Arts Committee and kind of see how I can contribute. And if anybody's any questions, I know it's probably a new face. You probably have questions, but yeah, happy to answer.
Any questions for the applicant? Member Pryforce?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So it looks like you're not an incumbent, so you haven't served.
This is the first time, yeah.
Okay. What do you think? So with your more a newer, nuanced perspective, what do you think are some shifts that can happen with the Public Art Committee, both as an outsider and also you kind of got a taste that there is something structural that probably needs to be updated with the Public Art Committee?
I will say, I think the Public Arts Committee that we have here is fantastic. I think they've been doing, every year I've been seeing them getting better and better at what they do. So I think for me, like a big part is to make sure that continues. And then to hear them talk about like, like the 1% kind of, contribution thing. Yeah, maybe if there is a way to kind of reinvest that money in a smarter way to kind of spread it out a little bit more. But even still, I think they're doing a really good job. The trend line that I'm seeing of like the creative work that they're putting into the community is really positive. Yeah.
Any other questions? Great, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Any other applicants for the Public Art Committee wishing to speak? Madam Clerk, do we have any written comments from applicants?
No, Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, I turn to you for deliberation on the appointments. Member Pryforce.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion. Some Arasu came highly recommended. Michael Haggerty, who hasn't served before, and Vicky Jo Sol and Rick Tejeda Flores, both presented today to be appointed, and Michael Haggerty will be reappointed, but for Salma and Michael to be first time appointed during the duration of their seat.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Yes, before we do the roll, Madam Clerk.
Yeah,
please.
Madam Clerk, I just have one question for you. Edith Bresnahan, did she respond to an email inviting her, and did she say she was able to come or not? I see Lorraine is flagging you, but maybe.
We did receive a phone call from her, and she said that she wasn't able to attend. We
Okay.
didn't receive anything written.
There's a motion and a second on the table, and obviously everybody who's here and applied, I think, is immensely qualified, and I'm not going to make a substitute motion tonight, but I just want to recognize Edith Bresnahan as a long-term resident of the Artist Co-op at 45th Street and a person who's dutifully served this committee for a number of years. And if she had been here tonight, I think she would have also impressed the members of the council.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Councilmember Bouders?
Aye.
Councilmember Carr?
Aye.
Councilmember Pryforce?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Mora?
Aye.
And Mayor Welch.
Aye. Madam Clerk, the time is 7:27 p.m. This meeting is adjourned. Madam Clerk, the time is still 7:27 p.m. I call to order the City of Emeryville as a successor agency to the Emeryville Redevelopment Agency. This meeting is being conducted in person at 1330 Park Avenue here in Emeryville. Madam Clerk, please note that the comments I made regarding the appropriate meeting conduct and comments still stands. And please note that all members are still in attendance. Item 3 is approval of the final agenda. Do we have a motion on the final agenda?
So moved.
I second.
Got a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Councilmember Bouders?
Aye.
Councilmember Carr?
Aye.
Councilmember Pryforce?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Mora?
Aye.
And Mayor Welch.
Aye. Item 4 is ex parte communications. Members, do any of you have ex parte communications to report for this agenda? Seeing and hearing none. Item 5 is public comment for the consent agenda or items not on this agenda. Any member of the public wishing to make a comment for the consent agenda or items not on the agenda can do so now for 2 minutes. Yes, please, come join us at the podium. You can, you can form a line, it's okay. Madam Clerk, are we set up? Or, yes, please. Thank you, Bonnie.
I thought I had 3 minutes, so if I go fast, please forgive. My name is Bonnie Esslinger. My husband and I have owned our home here in Emeryville since 2006 and are proud residents. I am the mother of one adult daughter and the grandmother to 2 beautiful toddlers, one 3 years old and one 18 months. One of my favorite things to do is to read to them, particularly since I know that doing so improves their language and cognitive skills. Further, studies have shown that you can bolster a child's educational success by introducing them to books at an early age. Unfortunately, not every mom has the money to buy books or the time to go to the library. So earlier this year, we decided to do something to give back to our wonderful community, put up a free little library for children's books. We live on 62nd Street, near the Top Park on Doyle. So we get a lot of families coming by our house. The metal sign on the front of the library that tells people they are free to take a book is in English and in Spanish. I try to keep a range of kids' books in the library that offer a diversity of perspectives and family representations. The library frequently cleans out, and then I put up a note on Nextdoor, the Buy Nothing page, and like magic, it gets filled up again. Unfortunately, on June 4th, we received a notice of removal from Public Works saying our 13 by 11 by 16-inch library was erected without proper approval. For that, I plead ignorance, and I apologize. We worked hard to make our library small so it wouldn't extend beyond the tree well and obstruct the sidewalk. I immediately sent an email to Public Works on June 5th asking to appeal the removal decision and received no response. I sent a follow-up email to the Public Works Director and received no response. Meanwhile, the June 17th deadline on the library's removal was fast approaching. So I reached out to a few other city officials. On June 12th, 1 week later, I received a phone call and an email from a very polite senior civil engineer.
Thank you for your comment.
I'm willing to do community service, to pay the fee, to have the permit. I don't have the financial resources to pay $230, the same amount you would have to pay if you did major construction on your house. I'm asking to find a way to keep our library. Thank you.
For your comment. Next speaker, please.
I'm going to take more than 3 minutes, so I ask you for the people with me to yield time? How does that work, Madam Clerk?
You could ask someone to yield your time.
Okay, thank you.
I'll allow it.
Okay. Thank you for having me, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. My name is Kurt Himmey, and my family owns the properties at 4045 Horton Street and 4056 Hubbard Street, as well as the Rug Depot retail store on the corner of Hubbard and 40th. I represent just one of the many Emeryville legacy business and property owners whose families have been operating, thriving, and providing services in Emeryville for decades. We are comprised of a community who care for each other and our livelihoods. We are comprised of a community that would survive the ups and downs of doing business in Emeryville for well over 40 years. Our collective concern is that the planning process for the Emeryville 40th Street multi-model project has been questionable and non-transparent from the onset. Ryan O'Connell from the 40th Street project team visited many of our businesses for the first time with several consultants as part of some initial community outreach in June of 2023. We discussed the project and voiced our concern over any proposed street closures. The next we heard from Ryan's office was a month later by email on July 14th, advising us there was a public hearing on the 40th Street multi-model project scheduled on July 18th, just 4 days away. Is announcing such an important meeting with significantly damaging outcomes just 4 days prior to the meeting date acceptable in the middle of summer? Those who saw the email and could attend the Zoom call on such short notice did. Objections were made. Objections were made by businesses and property owners alike on that Zoom call, and nonetheless, the project was approved as is by Zoom on that same call. How can a project with such impactful significance be approved on a Zoom call in such a stealth and under the radar manner? Is community input no longer solicited in Emeryville? Haven't legacy business owners earned the right to be treated like they belong? Why are we being treated like bad apples? Or potentially referred to as not in my backyarders, AKA NIMBYs, by social media spin doctors. Is this fair to us? This is not about backyards. This is about steamrolling legacy business owners' livelihoods to death and repossessing those properties for housing developments. Is this the city of Emeryville's idea of how the sense of community is nurtured? This process started back in 2009 when the city removed public parking and commercial loading zones for traditional Emeryville brick and mortar businesses along the 40th Street corridor. With no more parking, no more loading zones, businesses were unable to operate as they had for decades and were forced to reshuffle or close. Our family business, Bon Motif, located at 40th and Horton Street, was one such business forced to shutter its doors. 15 years later, we have still not found a tenant to lease the property due to access issues. 37,000 square feet. The 40th Street multi-model project, it appears, is not about bike or transit lanes at all. It is about systematic taking of commercial property and converting it to housing without invoking eminent domain and paying property owners their proper compensation. Whether a developer hides behind a bike lobby or a transit excuse, it is still a developer. If these suggested street closures take place, businesses will vacate, with limited or no prospective new tenants to backfill vacancies left by fleeing businesses. Property values will fall well below their current values. This decrease in property value will enable the city of Emeryville to acquire additional property for housing development at an extremely discounted cost basis relative to today's valuations. The mere fact that the proposed bike lanes and street closures are situated on the north side of 40th Street and not the south side of 40th, along the back side of the big box stores, is a case in point. None of the big box retailers have frontage on 40th, whereas most, if not all, of the small legacy business operators do have entrances on 40th Street. Running bike lanes along the south side of 40th would save a lot of businesses on the north side of 40th and have little or no impact on the big box retailers.
Thank you for your comment.
May I ask the-
Thank you. And just one moment before you keep speaking, I'll allow 2 yields.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Okay. Running bike lanes on the south side of 40th would save a lot of businesses on the north side of 40th and have little or no impact on the big box retailers, assuming no street closures. We understand much of Emeryville's traffic is, we understand much of the Emeryville's traffic study was done during the 2020, at the time of the pandemic, when traffic volumes were low. The recent traffic study commissioned by our neighbors at Butner Properties presents a quite different picture of traffic volumes and the impact street closures will have on traffic flow. Is there a recent traffic study commissioned by the city of Emeryville, which is readily available for public review, that supports the findings of the 2020 traffic study as still relevant and applicable to current traffic patterns? If so, could it please be made available to the public? The city of San Francisco proposed a similar multi-model project on the Valencia Street corridor. Unlike Emeryville, San Francisco met merchants constantly to figure out the best design for bicycle lanes. That outreach was conducted block by block to figure out how to accommodate the bike lanes as well as loading and parking needs for bikes, vehicles, and businesses alike. They even placed surveyors in the streets for months to get better understanding how residents, visitors, and merchants travel to, from, and within the Valencia corridor during this pilot. They developed survey questions to understand who was visiting Valencia Street and what they thought of the pilot project. These questions were important as they allowed San Francisco to more deeply understand how people get to Valencia, where they are going, and their perception of traffic safety, especially regarding the new projected bikeway. The survey was part of a 6-month evaluation of the protected bikeway design, and the results were used to assess how the design works to improve traffic safety and transportation along the Valencia Street corridor. Why was something like this not done here in Emeryville, where Emeryville merchants engaged by the city of Emeryville in a real meaningful effort to work together to find a solution to most everyone's needs, where surveyors sent to the streets, where surveys even distributed via mail or email, or posted on the 40th Street.
Thank you for your comment.
I'm gonna yield my time. Okay, thanks. Where surveys even distributed via mail or email are posted on the 40th Street Project's homepage. If not, why not? What have us legacy business done to deserve this treatment? Why is the city of Emeryville attempting to destroy local family livelihoods that have been at work for generations building their family nest eggs here in Emeryville? Consider all the employees of these legacy businesses will suffer. We have employees right here, 43 years, 23 years, 23 years, 17 years. When they find out that they've lost their jobs to a bike lane, how are they gonna feel? We all like bicycles. There are current bike lanes that function just fine up and down both sides of 40th Street. Adding traffic signals to those streets currently without traffic signals would improve safety. As for parklets, we have enough homeless encampments at our doorsteps. Who is going to maintain these various parklets, free of loitering encampments? Is the city of Emeryville committed to such an effort? Finally, I would close by saying that many Emeryville legacy property owners have been offered large sums of money to sell their properties, and many have said no, and opted to continue to operate their businesses here and stay loyal to our employees and Emeryville. Is shutting us down how we're compensated for our loyalty? We are asking that the city of Emeryville work with the legacy business and property owners to please find a workaround of the proposed street closures that will work for everyone. If the city of Emeryville continues with this clear and apparent prejudice against legacy businesses, then come November, we promise we will do what it takes to have our collective voices heard. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. We appreciate it.
Thank you for your comment. Any other member of the public wishing to make comment on the consent agenda or items not on the agenda can do so now for 2 minutes. Going once, going twice. Public comment is now closed. Item 6 is the consent calendar.
Motion to approve.
We've got a motion?
I'd like to pull an item.
Yes?
Item 10.8.
We're still redevelopment. All right.
Thanks.
Okay. Would you like to second?
Second.
Madam Clerk, we have a motion to second the roll, please.
Councilmember Bouders?
Aye.
Councilmember Carr?
Aye.
Councilmember Pryforce?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Mora?
Aye.
And Mayor Welch.
Aye. There are no action items. Madam Clerk, the time is 7:40. This meeting is adjourned. Madam Clerk, the time is still 7:40. I call to order the City Council meeting of the City of Emeryville. This meeting is being conducted at 1333 Park Avenue here in Emeryville, California. The comments I made earlier regarding appropriate comments and meeting conduct still stand. Madam Clerk, please note that all members of the City Council are still with us. And we'll move on to item 3, which is approval of the final agenda. Do we have a motion on the final agenda?
I'll make approval, motion to approve.
Are you pulling something, though?
That's for the consent.
That's consent.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Councilmember Bouders?
Aye.
Councilmember Carr?
Aye.
Councilmember Pryforce?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Mora?
Aye.
And Mayor Welch.
Aye. Item 4, special orders of the day. We have 2 special orders of the day. Item 4.1, proclamation of the City Council of the City of Emeryville recognizing June 19th, 2024 as Juneteenth Freedom Day in the City of Emeryville. The proclamation is as follows. Whereas June 19th, 2024 is declared as Juneteenth Freedom Day, a nationally recognized day which celebrates the rich culture, legacy, and heritage of Black and African American people. And whereas 2024 marks the 159th year of Juneteenth Freedom Day, with Juneteenth being the oldest known celebration commemorating the abolition of slavery in the United States, dating back to June 1865, when Union soldiers led by Major General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas, with news that the war had ended, freeing the enslaved. And whereas this was 2.5 years after President Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, which became official on January 1st, 1863. And whereas the United States Congress between 1865 and 1870 would pass key amendments to the U.S. Constitution that upon ratification by each state would profoundly change the legal status of those once enslaved. The 13th Amendment abolished bondage servitude. The 14th Amendment conferred citizenship upon those once enslaved. Finally, the 15th Amendment enfranchised men once held in bondage. And whereas today, Juneteenth Freedom Day celebrates Black and African American people's freedom and achievements while encouraging continuous self-development and respect for all cultures, as it takes a more national, symbolic, and global perspective to ensure the events of 1865 are not forgotten. And whereas the observance of Juneteenth honors the history and perseverance of Black and African American people and celebrates America's progress and continuing commitment to realizing the principles of liberty and equality upon which our nation was founded. And now, therefore, it be resolved by the City Council of the City of Emeryville that June 19th, 2024 is proclaimed Juneteenth Freedom Day, and the community is called upon to redouble its commitment to use its power to stamp out hate, racism, inequities, and continue the work of equality, justice, and hope, proclaimed by the Mayor of the City Council of the City of Emeryville at a regular meeting held Tuesday, June 18th, 2024. Members, would any of you like to make any comments? Member Pryforce?
I know that during Black History Month, we fly the red, black, and green, which is the Pan-African flag. The Juneteenth flag is very interesting, if anyone's seen it. The Juneteenth flag has red, white, and blue. And it also has the star of Texas. And you would think that those who were enslaved on plantations, that they would say, you know what, screw America, screw Texas, screw them all. But that's not it. Juneteenth being recognized as a holiday is also a recognition that the African American experience is the American experience. It's a deep love for this country and what we are building in this country, which is a democracy where everyone has their voice. that no matter where we come from, that we can all proudly stand for ourselves, for our families, for our businesses, for our communities, and that be received in a way that feels like home. You know, I am Haitian American, and so I'm not exactly African American. But growing up in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn, growing up around African Americans, the African American experience has guided me. But let's be real, I am Haitian. But just as Haitians also sharing the same colors, we pride ourselves on the Haitian flag and what it means to us. The Juneteenth and the Juneteenth flag, you know, I believe should have some representation here at City Hall, if not visually, but a reminder that we are all in this together. And as difficult as it may be sometimes to be an American, to see sometimes fascist comments, rhetoric, that a kid can knock on the door of a stranger and almost get their head blown off simply because they knocked on the wrong door. That we aren't our brother's keeper, our sister's keeper. That we aren't taking care of each other as neighbors. That the direction that we're going in this country, I hope that that the Juneteenth flag, just as the American flag, is embraced. And so that is why I believe that the Pledge of Allegiance should return to this council chamber, because that is, I believe, the African American experience, which is that we love this country too. It may look a little differently, but the love is still there. And so I celebrate Juneteenth.
Any other members wishing to make comments? Juneteenth is personally historically significant to me and many Bay Area natives. Many folks who grew up here in the Bay Area, San Francisco, Oakland, Emeryville, Berkeley, have very close ties to Galveston, Texas. It's actually one of the major cities that many of us have grandparents and great-grandparents who moved out this way during the Great Migration or from. Even our own Congresswoman Barbara Lee's family is from Galveston, Texas. And she has spoken of knowing and hearing stories that she did have ancestors that were there when they arrived with news of freedom. So it's very culturally significant to Black people in the Bay Area, and growing up here, going every year to the Juneteenth celebration that they have in Berkeley, knowing what it represented for just us here as a community. I am happy that the progress that it has made to be recognized as a national holiday, and truly what I believe taking its place as getting the acknowledgement that it needs in the history of America. As we know, so much of Black history is being attacked and dismissed and hidden in so many other parts of the nation. My grandmother was born in a town by the name of Galesburg, Illinois, and Galesburg is recognized nationally as one of the stops on the Underground Railroad. And my grandmothers, our ancestors, we know not too much about them, but we know that they fled slavery and went up through the Underground Railroad and settled in Galesburg. And so thinking about how so many people either had to flee or had to wait to be free, and what that means to be in my role, in this role as mayor, as a Black woman, and how it's a time of celebration, it's a time of jubilee, but it's also a time to rededicate ourselves, myself, us as a community to the work, and what does freedom really mean, and that freedom is not free. And one quote I always think about is one from Coretta Scott King, where she essentially says that you have to fight for freedom in every generation, and that you have to hold the line, because every time we have a little bit of progress, the pushback is often very extremely swift and strong. And just knowing that here in Emeryville, we are holding the line on that progress and rededicating ourselves as a city and a community to truly be a place that uplifts those ideals of what it really means to be an inclusive community. And so I am very happy to have this proclamation be a part of our city's history. And thank you, everyone, and please enjoy your Juneteenth tomorrow. And with that being said, we'll move on to item 4.2, which is the proclamation of the City Council of the City of Emeryville, recognizing June 21st, 2024 as International Yoga Day. The proclamation is as follows. Whereas the City of Emeryville recognizes the profound benefits of yoga in fostering physical, mental, and spiritual well-being, and whereas yoga is an ancient practice that originated in India and has been embraced worldwide and means to promote harmony, peace, and inner tranquility, and whereas International Yoga Day is celebrated annually on June 21st, as declared by the United Nations General Assembly in 2014 to raise awareness about the benefits of yoga to promote its practice globally, and whereas yoga encourages mindfulness, stress reduction, resilience, contributing to healthier, happier communities, and whereas the City of Emeryville is committed to supporting initiatives that promote holistic health and wellness for all its residents, and whereas the city acknowledges the contributions of yoga practitioners, instructors, and organizations in fostering individual and community well-being, in particular, Archanya Shunya and her nonprofit, Vedika Global, which has attracted students from all over the globe to Emeryville during its decade of operation before the pandemic. And whereas the city promotes the benefits of yoga within our community, and now therefore be resolved by the City Council of the City of Emeryville that June 21st, 2024 is hereby proclaimed as International Yoga Day, and the city calls upon schools, businesses, community organizations, and individuals to join in celebrating International Yoga Day to incorporate yoga into their daily lives for improved well-being, proclaimed by the mayor of the City Council of the City of Emeryville at a regular meeting held Tuesday, June 18th, 2024. And I do believe we have a video message.
Namaste, I'm Acharya Shunya, and I am deeply privileged to receive this proclamation from the City of Emeryville, presented by Mayor Courtney Welsh, commemorating the International Yoga Day on June 21st. I'm a teacher of yoga philosophy and yoga practices. I hail originally from India, and I'm privileged to belong to a lineage of yoga masters that go back several generations, in fact, hundreds of years in India. I am the first teacher of this lineage to travel to the West, and incidentally, the first home of yoga that I established in America was in Emeryville. It is here that I began disseminating yoga knowledge along with its sister sciences of Ayurveda and Vedanta. Through my nonprofit, Vedika Global, yoga, I believe, was positively impacted in the United States. And I believe, once again, that my work has been impacted by the city of Emeryville. The beautiful city, its parks, its tree-lined roads, and the safety and civil structures, the compassionate police force, the healthful environment, the welcoming environment that we received from day one in 2008 till the very end in 2019 was deeply supportive of our mission. A special shout out to Council Member Sukhdeep Kaur for her dedication to practicing and disseminating the light of yoga, and for supporting the proclamation for June 21st. The efforts have been instrumental in making the recognition possible. Thank you, Emeryville. Thank you, Mayor Courtney Welch, Vice Mayor, and the esteemed council members for curating a community where ancient wisdom can thrive and positively impact modern lives. Thank you so much.
I'd just like to thank Member Carr as well and invite her to say any additional words if you see to it.
Thank you so much, Mayor Welch, and the council for agreeing to this proclamation. I would like to invite my teacher's husband, Sanjay ji, and her students. I'm one of them to receive the proclamation. But before that, I can say something in their honor.
Please
And
do.
in honor of yoga, I wrote this down because it's given me too much and I feel very emotional about this subject. So I want to say everything that I want to say succinctly. So as we honor this ancient practice of yoga, scientifically proven to promote holistic well-being, I'm thankful to you, Sanjay ji, and Acharya Shunya for being a beacon of light and inspiration. Your students are not only yoga and Ayurveda practitioners and teachers, but business leaders, lawyers, doctors, educators, scientists, and now a city council member. You've drawn students from all over the world during your time in Emeryville, and I have had the honor of hosting some of your students from Canada and from the Midwest at my residence in Emeryville. For the upcoming occasion of International Yoga Day, I express my deep gratitude for your teaching of yoga and Ayurveda. Also, I hope that California will consider making yoga more accessible to all by passing a legislation that Illinois did with SB 2872 earlier this year in April. It permits school districts to include yoga in their curriculum to enhance the mental and physical well-being of their students. So I look forward to something like that in California, and it's all thanks to you as my teachers, and I appreciate your being here. Thank you, Mayor, for agreeing to this proclamation.
Thank you for recommending it. Would you like to?
Oh, I appreciate that a lot. Thanks so much.
Please.
Namaste.
Namaste.
I'm Sanjay Mathur, and I'm here to express gratitude on behalf of Acharya Shunya for the proclamation she has received today from Mayor Welch. This honor recognizes her and her 2,000-year-old Indian Vedic lineage's contribution to spreading the message of yoga and Ayurveda, firmly rooted in ancient wisdom. For 11 uninterrupted years, Acharya Shunya has advanced the cause of yoga and Ayurveda among the residents of Emeryville, as well as seekers of health and well-being across the United States. Acharya Shunya's nonprofit Vedika Global was established in 2008 in Emeryville. As a co-founder of Vedika Global, along with Acharya Shunya and board members Hema Patankar and Janet Dobrovolny, I have experienced the city's support firsthand. When we moved into a larger space on Doyle Street in 2010, the local police department welcomed us and offered us their assistance. We requested extra support for our late night classes, and for years, a police car was always parked outside our building, always ready to help. Emeryville has truly boosted yoga and Ayurveda, and its mayor, council members, and citizens can be proud of their contributions. As Acharya Shunya's life partner and co-teacher of yoga and Ayurveda, I sincerely thank the city of Emeryville, the mayor, and the council members for their unwavering support in helping yoga prosper in our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Moving. What did you, oh, yes, sorry about that. Please do.
Hello, my name's Leanne Vimala Brady. What an honor and pleasure it is to be here speaking of my teacher, Acharya Shunya, and the lovely space she created here in Emeryville on Doyle Street. It was a place of wisdom, healing, and community that in the Vedic tradition is known as a kula. Over the decade we occupied the space, I received much healing and also became a healer. I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2004. Ayurveda and yoga became such a pillar of support for my health. I had to study this philosophy so that I could help others with the same knowledge and wisdom. Acharya Shunya created a low-cost clinic where we trained Ayurvedic practitioners while offering care to the community. We ran the clinic under the guidance of Ayurvedic doctors who came from India to teach us Ayurveda and serve our clinic, leaving their families behind for 6-month stints to be part of our kula and community. The peoples whose lives were touched by this organization is far-reaching, both in spirit and globally. Over the years, Ayurveda served as the backbone of the organization, while Vedantic wisdom and yoga philosophy emerged as the heart and soul. Acharya Shunya taught deep and resonant scripts from ancient Vedic texts and yoga 1,000 years old. Anyone was welcome to these talks, and free dinner was always offered. She translated the verses to us in a way to help us become upstanding citizens to our community, our humanity, our planet. Most importantly, to the deepest part of each of us that holds the essence of who we are, a roadmap of how to live our truth. So I thank the city for this opportunity and for all the students and the clients that we were able to serve.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? All right, item 5, announcement of commission and committee vacancies. Let me guess, Planning Commission.
Yes, there are vacancies on the Planning Commission because we didn't have any applicants.
Anything else?
We are opening another recruitment at the beginning of July because we have several vacancies that were not filled during this recruitment, and council will be making appointments at the first meeting in September.
Thank you very much. Item 6, council member special announcements and reports on meeting and attendance. All right. Item 7, city manager's report.
Nothing to report, Madam Mayor.
Cool. Item 8, ex parte communications. Members, please look one more time at the agenda. Any ex parte communications to report for this agenda? Seeing and hearing none. Item 8, public comment for the consent agenda and items not on the agenda. Any member of the public wishing to make a comment on the consent agenda or items not on the agenda can do so now for 2 minutes. Anyone? Going once, going twice. All right, public comment is now closed. Item 10, consent agenda. Members, please review the consent agenda. If anyone would like to pull an item for the consent agenda, Vice Mayor Moore.
I'd like to pull 10.8.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve items 10.1 through 10.7?
I'll make a motion.
I was just going to ask if it's just a question and discussion, or if Member Mora believes he can't vote on consent, because we could just wait to take the motion after discussion if you want.
I guess I'm not sure. I do have some questions on it.
Okay, I'll second the motion then.
Madam Clerk, we have a motion and second. The roll, please.
Councilmember Bouders?
Aye.
Councilmember Carr?
Aye.
Councilmember Pryforce?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Mora?
Aye.
And Mayor Welch?
Aye. We'll take item 10.8, resolution of the City Council of the City of Emeryville authorizing the city manager to execute a contract for the purchase of Two-piece manufacturing enforcer, 1,500 GPM Type 1 fire engines for the fire department uses Emeryville from Golden State Fire Apparatus, not to exceed an amount of $2,300,025,104. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. This city council has endorsed electrifying the police fleet, the city vehicle fleet, and I see that the intent is also the fire engines. So one thing I'm curious about, we know these electric vehicles are faster, cleaner, cheaper to maintain. So I'm curious about the due diligence that we did looking into electric fire engines. And I do want to note that just a cursory search, I did find that the Los Angeles Fire Department purchased a truck 2 years ago for the same price we're being quoted for one of these engines. Yes, Chief, if you can weigh in on that.
No problem. Thank you, Madam Mayor Welch and council members for allowing me to come up. So the purchases of fire engines, engine 34 and 35, it should have some statements. So I go back to the engine 34 and 35. Both engines was purchased one was purchased in 2009 and the next one was purchased in 2010. So per NFPA, you have a 15-year lifespan. Right now, the turnaround time to purchase an engine for delivery into the firehouse is 4 years, 48 months. So that'll put both engines approximately 20 years in their lifespan, with 5 years being past due. One of the things with the electrical engines, yes, LA Fire Department was the first ones to purchase an electrical engine. But they are truly, you hear electrical, but they also have a diesel engine inside of it as well. Approximately for one engine is $2 million for the electrical engine. Not the same price as one engine that we're purchasing right now. So now you go back into the infrastructures at Station 34 and 35. Does our stations have the infrastructure to maintain and charge a electrical fire engine? Not at this moment. We do not. So now you have to put more money into about $500K for our infrastructure to support that electrical fire engine. Now we start talking about maintenance. Our mechanics for the Alameda County Fire Department, our fleet shop is one of the top fleet shops in Alameda County, if not in the Bay Area. We have engines from Sacramento, we have engines from Oakland, we have engines from Piedmont. They all send their engines to Alameda County Fire Department. Why? Because our fleet staff is top notch. So you get an electrical engine, who's going to maintain the maintenance on an electrical engine? So now we're speaking more money. So one of the downfalls for the electrical engine is really the infrastructure in the fire stations will not support the electrical engine. And again, $2 million for one engine is not the same price that you will be paying for engine that's being proposed right now. So basically, we could buy 2 engines for $2 million.
Thank you for the additional information, Chief. Just some follow-up questions. And I really appreciate the perspective on the maintenance and the infrastructure. Those should not be overlooked. The $2 million quote, was the manufacturer Pierce or Rosenbauer? Do you recall who that came from? And did we look for additional quotes, perhaps?
This is I believe it's Pierce, and it's $2 million for both, close to approximately $2 million for 2 engines. I will go back to our fleet shop. I have full faith in them going out, doing the research of who's the best manufacturer to purchase from. So take in mind, we have 26 engines, about 25 stations in Alameda County, 29 stations. So when you have someone that's familiar with the engines, what our fleet shop, our maintenance try to do is make sure that all the engines are to the same spec. Mm-hmm. So when we have somebody that comes in, they know exactly how to operate the engine. And it's a safety issue too. So at the end of the day, the men and women of the Alameda County Fire Department and the community members, that's who we prioritize first, and we want to make sure they're safe.
I agree. Yeah, the overriding concern should be the consistency of the fleet and the ability to maintain it. And I trust that you guys are looking at technology changes, and when there is a suitable electric engine, maybe on the next renewal. It is unfortunate that's at least 15 years out, but I do appreciate the background and perspective. So I'll make a motion to approve 10.8 resolution to purchase the fire trucks.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Councilmember Bouders?
Sorry, Madam Clerk, Member Pryforce, do you have a question?
Yeah. So I have just something that that's been coming to my attention, my awareness, especially in the spirit of yoga, when it comes to mindfulness. That I know that our electrification and multiple cities electrification, stumble on the word, is important, especially as we're making our cities green, our economies green. At the same time, I would like to extend a mindfulness over batteries and how a lot of these batteries that are going into these vehicles, into these systems, that the minerals are coming from conflict areas. And it looks like there isn't an end in sight in the links that we will make in our country to create war, seed war, and push for the dehumanization of people as relates to the type of slave labor that is used to mine these minerals, to create these batteries, to make us feel better about greening our cities. And so, there are some folks who say, well, my parents or my ancestors didn't participate in enslaving anyone, but there sure was a lot of cotton being worn in those days. The amount of companies that benefited from Auschwitz and Nazi death camps, the products, the soap, we have a history of looking the other way just in order for us to attain some of our goods. And so I don't want to reverse course when it comes to the electrification of our vehicles, when it comes to our police and fire and our public services. I don't want to reverse course. I just ask us to be a bit more mindful and also to read some of the fine print when it comes to when we license these companies, when we make these purchases, on where these batteries are coming from. Because if we are buying these products, let's just say that we're buying these products. Let's admit to it. Let's write it down. Let's market it, and then later on we may have to participate in some sort of reparations for the kind of harm that we do. But at least let's be honest and transparent about it. And so I just ask that we be mindful of those who are currently losing their loved ones simply because countries like ours are racing to green our cities. So that's what I want to share.
Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Councilmember Bouders?
Aye.
Councilmember Carr?
Aye.
Councilmember Pryforce?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Mora?
Aye.
And Mayor Welch?
Aye. Item 11.1 is introduction and first reading of the ordinance of the City Council of the City of Emeryville, amending the public safety regulations in Title IV of the Emeryville Municipal Code regarding speed limits. Do we have staff? Hello, hi, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Oh, man, rocking and rolling. Oh, yeah.
Good evening, everyone.
Oh, pull the microphone. Yep.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Shruti Srivastava, and I'll be presenting on the engineering and traffic survey recommendations on behalf of city staff and ITERIS. ITERIS and the city staff began this project to conduct an engineering and traffic survey along 15 segments in Emeryville in June 2023. We provided recommendations to city staff in February of 24 and amended the study June of 2024. Next slide, please. Before we get into the recommendations, we want to ask ourselves, why are we doing this? What is the purpose and need of an engineering and traffic survey? When set, speed limits need to be justified with an engineering and traffic survey study. Speed limits provide feedback to drivers, letting them know that they are the majority of drivers who find that speed safe and comfortable and reasonable on the road. Similarly, speed limits also allow for fair enforcement by PD towards drivers that are exceedingly faster than the majority of drivers who find the speed safe and reasonable. A typical engineering and traffic survey study includes conducting 85th percentile speed survey using radar, review of collision data, traffic counts, and roadside conditions such as sight distance analysis. With the passing of Assembly Bill 43, it also introduces greater flexibility to establishing speed limits. Our speed limit from the previous speed study that was done in Emeryville was in 2016, and it now needs to be renewed. Next slide, please. The Assembly Bill 43 was passed in September of 2021, and some of the relevant provisions from that bill, which were included in our engineering and traffic survey study, are provided here. The relevant ones are that it allows us to establish 15 and 20 mile per hour speed limits, which was traditionally 25 prior to the Assembly Bill. It also allows for 20 to 25 mile per hour speed limits on roadway contiguous to business activity districts, provided certain considerations are met. If they are met, then you would not need an engineering and traffic survey in that case. It also considers safety of vulnerable pedestrian groups and bicycles, but if the street segment is either a safety corridor or has high concentration of pedestrians and bicycles. Next slide, please. As a part of the study, we reviewed whether the 6 segments were eligible for extension of existing speed limits. We resurveyed 3 segments from the previous study. We added and surveyed 6 new segments, and we also reviewed Assembly Bill 43 eligibility for further 5 miles per hour speed reduction at the 9 surveyed segments. From the study, our recommendations are that the existing speed limit at the 6 street segments from 2016 engineering and traffic study be extended to 2030. For the surveyed segments, we recommend reduction in speed limit for 6 segments, maintaining existing speed limit for 3 segments. There were no segments where we recommend increasing the speed limit. As you can see on the map, it shows the gray color, the street segments which are colored in gray, show all the streets where there's going to be no change in the speed limit. The segments highlighted with orange are the segments where the speed limit is reducing from 25 miles an hour to 15 miles an hour. These include Horton Street and 53rd Street. For the segments highlighted in blue, which is a section of 65th Street, Christie Avenue, and Park Street, have their speed limits reduced from, we are recommending reducing the speed limits from 25 to 20 miles per hour. And as the north section of Hollis Street, speed limit recommendation is to reduce it from 30 to 25 miles per hour. With that, we conclude our presentation and present the following action items to the Council. Waive first reading and introduce ordinance by title only. Take public testimony regarding the ordinance and adopt the first reading of the ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any clarifying questions before I open the public hearing for members? Member Pyforce.
Could you place the map up again? Because I've gotten contacted by folks who are worried about Hollis, and it looks like the map is saying that only Hollis will be partially affected by the speed limit. And so I just want to make sure that that is like really clear to the folks out there. Could you tell us a little more about like what's happening with Hollis?
So the current existing speed limit on Hollis is 30 miles per hour. We did an 85th percentile speed study where we collected speed data, and based on the speed data collected, the 85th percentile speed was 32.5 miles per hour. With the California Vehicle Code, there are certain considerations you can make to reduce speed limit, and with those considerations, we recommended reducing the speed limit to 25 miles per hour.
Got it. And it looks like from what I'm seeing, this is the part of Hollis that is past that, the big intersection. And it's mostly a residential, like it's hitting the park, it's hitting a lot of residential places. There's some coffee shops there and that sort of thing. And so it looks like it isn't. Good question I have. As you were going through these studies, what was the conversation like with police and fire as it relates to how they sort of police or how they get to their destinations as it relates to speed and so on?
ITERIS did not talk to police and fire. However, I'll defer this question to the city staff.
Yes, we have both Captain Collins here and Public Works Director Aloui, who could speak to that. There were conversations between Public Works and police about this specifically, and police basically said, yes, we can enforce if these speed limits are changed.
Okay.
Do you have anything to add?
I have nothing further to add. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Right. Any other clarifying questions? All right. Madam Clerk, the time is 8:22 p.m. I open this public hearing. Any member of the public that would like to comment on 11.1 can do so now for 2 minutes. Going once, going twice. Madam Clerk, the time is still 8:22 p.m. I am closing the public hearing. Members, I turn to you for deliberation on this item.
Motion to read by title only.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Councilmember Bouders?
Aye.
Councilmember Carr?
Aye.
Councilmember Pryforce?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Mora?
Aye.
And Mayor Welch?
Aye. Mr. City Attorney, please.
Thank you, Mayor Welch. Ordinance of the City Council of the City of Emeryville amending Section 4-9.39 subsection F, speed limits in Chapter 9, Vehicular Traffic and Parking of Title 4 of the Emeryville Municipal Code, CEQA determination exempt pursuant to state CEQA guidelines, Section 15061, subsection B, subsection 3. Thank you.
To approve the ordinance.
I'll second.
There's motion and a second. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Councilmember Bouders?
Aye.
Councilmember Carr?
Aye.
Councilmember Pryforce?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Mora?
Aye.
And Mayor Welch?
Aye. Thank you. Item 12.1, resolution of the City Council of the City of Emeryville adopting the program guidelines for the Emeryville Accessible Living Initiative. Hello, Valerie.
Hello. Good evening.
Good. We got it up.
All right, great. Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. My name is Valerie Bernardo. I'm the Community and Economic Development Coordinator, and tonight I'm going to be presenting to you our Emeryville Accessible Living Initiative, or EALI for short, program guidelines. Next slide, please. So in creating these guidelines, I wanted to start with why are we creating accessibility guidelines or an accessibility program? In 2022, the City Council did adopt the Age-Friendly Action Plan. Within that action plan, it did identify that there was a need to increase awareness and utilization of housing rehab programs, specifically targeting accessibility improvements for our senior homeowners. Additionally, in 2022, the City Council adopted the 2023 to 2031 Housing Element Plan. Within that housing element plan, there was goal multiple goals, one which was goal number 2, to improve the condition of our existing housing stock, to enhance the livability of neighborhoods for all of our residents. And one of our guiding principles or policies related to implementing that goal is H21, which is to facilitate the rehabilitation of our existing housing stock to correct housing deficiencies and increase useful life and increase, again, accessibility for all of our residents. So there's a reoccurring theme that we're seeing here. And then thirdly, in 2023, the city did apply for a pro-housing implementation pilot grant. We were successful in our application and received $575,000 that came through a grant agreement in 2024. One of the allowable eligible uses for those funding was accessibility. So we thought that this provided a good streamlined approach to those other 2 action plans and goals that the city had. Next slide. So prior to developing the guidelines, we did do 2 surveys. The first survey, which was released in March 2024, was a multi-unit property survey. It was intended to go to our multifamily property owners as well as our homeowners associations. In that survey that was released for 2 weeks, we received 18 responses to the survey. 50% of those that did respond said that they were primarily interested in common area improvements only. I will say 90% were interested in in-unit improvements as well as common area, but the majority of the responses were interested in common area. And 85% of those that did respond said that they were representing properties that had more than 26 units. In that survey, we asked participants to identify what were the common area improvements that they were interested in for the properties. And the number 1 response that came in for that survey was our easy to install or open doors. There were quite a few other items that did receive several responses, like the replacing the lighting, installing common area seating, installing handrails. But the number 1 response that we received was easy to open doors. Next slide. Our second survey was a resident survey. This was sent out also at the exact same time, only for residents of Emeryville to respond. We received 40 responses to that survey. I was pleasantly surprised to see that we had a very evenly distributed geographic representation of the city, representing the 4 so-called quadrants of our city. 50% of those who responded were homeowners, the other 50% were tenants. 50% of the respondents were over 55, and 40% of the respondents had a physical, visual, or auditory disability. In that survey, we asked residents to identify in-unit improvements that they would like to see related to their unit. And the number 1 response we received was replacing lighting. The second top response was also easy to open doors. Responses varied between handrails, improvements to the bathrooms through adjustable shower heads, ADA compliant toilets, shower seats, and so forth. But again, the number 1 response was improving lighting. Next slide. So we took that data and started working on creating our guidelines. The objective of our guidelines is to make homes more accessible, safer, and more comfortable for people with disabilities or movement restrictions. We want to stress that this is not intended to be a remodeling program or a maintenance program. It really is focused on creating improvements for residents as they continue to age in place, or for those who may have movement restrictions. We've identified 3 potential borrowers for the program. The first one would be disabled or homeowners who are 62 years of age or older. The second eligible borrower would be our homeowners associations, and the third would be our affordable multi-unit rental properties that have at least 5 years remaining on their recorded affordability restriction. Next slide. For our eligible homeowners, we took a lot of the feedback that we received from the survey to develop our list of eligible activities. They include everything from addressing evenly textured flooring, handrails, installing easy-to-open windows, easy-to-open doors, motion-sensored lights, making modifications to the bathroom, whether it's a walk-in shower, grab bars, adjustable shower heads, making sure there's ADA-compliant kitchen appliances. Exterior area improvements would also be eligible, and we also include smart home features, which would be installed but don't require a monthly service fee. For our homeowners, the eligible units would be our single-family homes, as well as our 1 to 4 unit homes, as well as our multi-unit condominiums. Next slide. For our homeowners associations and our affordable rental properties, the listing is very similar, but these eligible activities would only be related to common area improvements only. These funds would not be eligible to do in-unit improvements in rental or homeowner units through the HOA. So again, we could do indoor and outdoor lighting, weather protection for stairs, easy to install windows, making sure there's an ADA compliant common area bathroom, easy to open doors, wayfinding signs, ramps, or any type of additional exterior area improvement. Next slide. Things that would be ineligible with the program would be any type of activity that would require relocation of existing residents. Anything that would be classified as new construction. If there's a project that's already underway, we would not contribute funding to that as well. Funds do need to go towards non-capital expenses, and it does have to be work that is a fix to the unit. So cosmetic repairs that don't have an accessibility component also would not be eligible. Landscaping would not be eligible. And if there's work that does require a permit and the applicant does not get a permit and request funding for it, we would also not reimburse that. I did want to make a special note that we have included in our guidelines that for our multi-unit buildings that were built prior to 1992, they are not going to be required to be brought up to accessibility standards of today. However, they will have to work within a certain sequencing related to the building code. A good example of that is if an applicant came in and applied for funding to do an accessible bathroom, but there was not an accessible pathway to get to that bathroom. We would prioritize doing the accessible pathway over doing the accessible bathroom. Next slide. The other requirements that are included in the guidelines are for our multi-unit properties, they would have to comply with the state prevailing wages. Our borrowers would be responsible for any cost overruns. Homeowners that have tenant-occupied properties, we would provide assistance to those, but the homeowner would have to agree to certain tenant protections. They must notify the tenant that they're participating in the program. The work, again, could not require any relocation of the tenant, and the notification to the tenant would say so. Additionally, we would require that the rent would be frozen for that tenant for at least 12 months until the completion of the work is completed. And then we would also put a restriction that the owner of that property would not be able to increase that tenant's rent more than 5% annually for a maximum of 5 years. Our homeowner compliance requirement would also continue with this program to ensure that our homeowners are continuing to live in the property and not using the funds to make improvements and then flip the property. And then we've also included a clause to allow the city manager to waive any of our guidelines on a case-by-case basis to ensure that the city achieves our objective and the grant timelines that are set by the state. Next slide. So when it comes to doing our application pools, we have a set of general priorities as well as priorities for our homeowners association and affordable rental properties and our homeowners. Our general priorities are, of course, the relationship between the improvements and the impact on daily living, the appropriateness of the applicant's proposed budget. We want to ensure that they have a realistic funding plan and that we're prioritizing those projects that have developed that. And we want to also prioritize projects that can realistically be completed by the March 31st, 2025 deadline. For homeowners, we want to prioritize our lower income homeowners. So they would have our top priority, those that are below 80% of area median income. And then our lowest priority would be for those households that are above 120% of AMI. For our rental and HOAs, we want to prioritize the number of households that are served by the improvements to the common area, as well as the amount of funding that is being leveraged by our investment. Next slide. So we received $575,000. 5% of that can be allocated towards admins. It's about $28,750. The balance of the funding is broken up into two pools, so we'd have two application pools. The first one is our homeowner pool would have $276,250. The maximum loan homeowners would be able to apply for would be $15,000. It would be a 3% simple interest. Interest would accrue only for 5 years, and then interest would stop accruing. It would be a secured loan related to a deed and note recorded against the property. For those households that are below 80% of AMI or considered low income, that loan would be forgiven in 10 years. For those households that are 80% of AMI or higher, it would be required to be repaid upon the sale or transfer of the home. For our HOA and affordable rental pool, they would compete against each other, and that pool is $270,000. For both of them, there would be a maximum loan of $45,000 or 50% of the cost of the project. The example for that would be if somebody was proposing $100,000 worth of work, 50% of the cost is $50,000. However, we have a maximum loan of $45,000. So $45,000 would be the maximum they'd receive. Arguably, if their project was $80,000 in total, 50% of that cost would be $40,000, so we would only fund $40,000 towards that. So it's either a max of 45 or 50% of the cost. Again, those loans would be a 3% simple interest, amortized over a 10-year period. For the HOAs, we would provide them with the ability to either have an unsecured loan or a secured with the pledge of assessments, and the HOAs would be required to make biannual payments back to the city for the loan. For the affordable housing projects, the loan would be secured and the loan would be forgiven over a 10-year period. Next slide. When it comes to marketing and doing outreach for the program, we've worked on a marketing plan. So we have started creating our flyers. We would use the flyers to distribute to our HOA contact list. We've gone through and identified 29 HOAs here in Emeryville that we would send the information to related to the program. Also reaching out to our 100% affordable providers. There's 9 properties here in Emeryville. We would work with the senior center and make sure there's information on the program available there. Also work through the Commission on Aging. We have information that we would post on the city's news flash, send out through our housing portal, and also post on our Facebook page. And then we'd also work with our service providers. We've worked up a proposal to do one-on-one technical assistance hours that we would set up at the senior center so that if people had questions, they could come in and talk to somebody about the application, how to put that together. Also working with our service provider, Rebuilding Together Northeast Bay, who also provides accessibility improvements and home and safety repairs here in Emeryville, working with them on homeowners that may have additional needs that they can't service that we'd be able to service to this program. Also working with Echo Housing and the Center for Independent Living when they get requests for people who have disabilities or need improvements to their home, making referrals that way as well. Next slide. So our project timeline. It is a very aggressive timeline. We received the award grant agreement in January of 2024, and we are coming to you today seeking City Council approval. We would work on doing the marketing of the program between June and September of 2024. The application period right now is scheduled to launch July 15th and be open for 60 days. It'll take us to September 17th, where we would continue advertising the program, trying to get people to apply. We would make application awards between October and November, and we would require all applicants who received an award to have a loan closing by January 31st, 2025. The reason for the very short timeline is because the grant funds have an expenditure deadline, and that expenditure deadline is March 31st, 2025. There also is a completion deadline, so while the funds have to be expended by March, all the project work has to be completed by June of 2025, and then the city would require to do all the closeout information with the state by 2026. Those are statutory deadlines, the 2 in red. We currently do not have the ability of changing those dates. There is an option potentially for the state to give us a 90-day waiver of the expenditure deadline, but we would not be able to request that right now. So we really have tried to work hard to develop a program and identify work that can be done in a very short time frame to ensure that we are meeting the objective of expending the funds and still making sure we're providing accessibility improvements. Next slide. So we have gone to the Commission on Aging. We did that on June 12th, and we also went to the Housing Committee. Both committees actually did recommend that the City Council adopt the proposed guidelines. Some of the comments that came out of the Housing Committee was related to financing and providing maybe some different financing options. There was also concern that there would be little interest from homeowner associations participating in the program, just because there was a feeling that oftentimes it's hard to get the HOA board members to agree on making certain types of improvements or trying to get everybody on one page to do an application. So those were concerns that the Housing Committee did identify specifically about the HOAs. The financing alternative that we've proposed here, still sticking with the $15,000 loan for our homeowners, but we've tiered the repayment. So that more of the loan is forgiven. So households below 80% of AMI, the loan would now be forgiven in a 5-year time frame, except for in the original proposal, which was 10 years. Households between 80 and 120 AMI, it would be forgiven in a 10-year time frame. And then those households above 120% of AMI, we would require monthly payments and have it amortized over a 10-year. Part of the reason for this shift was the thought that providing a $15,000 loan that's due and payable whenever the home sells means that that loan could be outstanding on the property for a significant amount of time. And there is a useful life related to all work that goes into a house. And so having a loan outstanding on work that was done maybe 20, 30 years ago wasn't something that the committee thought that we should do. So we decided to do a tiered approach as an alternative. The payments for the HOA and the affordable rental are the exact same. Next slide. The Commission on Aging also had some good questions in regards to how do we determine if we're successful. So we wanted to put some thought into how we would evaluate the success of the program. And so there's 4 things that we've identified that we'd like to do. So one, we have our performance metrics. It's looking at the number of borrowers we provided assistance to, the number of specific low-income households assisted. With the program, the way it's currently designed, we're looking to assist approximately 18 homeowners and 6 either HOA or 100% affordable housing developers. We also want to look at our financial metrics, so tracking the amount of funding that we've leveraged and also the amount of funds that we've been able to expend. We want to look at what is our impact. So how widely utilized was the program? Do we have a geographic distribution related to where the funding is going throughout the city? And then also, what is the type of quality of life improvements we're able to make? What are the type of improvements and activities that our homeowners are looking for? And then lastly, we also wanted to, of course, incorporate a survey to understand the ease and functionality of the program design so that once we go through all of this evaluation, we can determine whether or not it's a program that the City Council would be interested in funding again in the future, either through going after grant funding or utilizing another source of funding. So we wanted to make sure that we're doing that evaluation and are able to bring that information back to the council. Next slide. So the action that I am requesting today is for the City Council to consider adopting the program guidelines for the Emeryville Accessible Living Initiative. And with that, I'll be able to answer any questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you. Any clarifying questions before I call for public comment?
I have several.
Clarifying questions?
Or
discussion-based questions?
Clarifying questions for now. Thanks, Valerie, for the presentation. Really appreciate it. I have questions regarding the some of these slides, especially regarding the programs relating to HOAs. So if we could go back to maybe, is it slide 7? Because I tried to take notes to see what.
That's correct.
Would we have that on the screen so I can ask my question?
Madam Clerk, do you mind bringing that back up for us?
While that's being done, I'm going to ask another clarifying question, if that's okay, Mayor. This is only for loans, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so this is not like a grant situation. What I'm trying to understand is what happens if people don't apply for the loan, what happens to that $575,000 because they feel too deterred to apply for the loan?
So one of the reasons we put in the requirement for the city manager to be able to make changes, and we also have built into the application, is if an applicant wants an exception to a rule or to a term that's in the guidelines, to identify that. So if there are insufficient applicants, then we would need to figure out, we'd have to be able to move very quickly and figure out why. So we do have all the people that responded to the survey. We have contact information to them. We are able to reach out directly back to them. If there's a concern in regards to the fact that it is a loan, even though it's a forgivable loan, that's something I think we could walk through with them. The reason we do a forgivable loan or a loan is because while the funding is coming to us as a grant, we want to ensure that people aren't just taking the public funds and making improvements and then turning around and selling their home. So we issue it as a loan, that way we can kind of record our investment against the property. But a forgivable loan acts like a grant. So as long as they meet the requirements for a specific period of time, the loan would then be forgiven, not requiring any payment. And that is why we specifically kind of put those requirements in for the homeowners. We have it on the 100% affordable housing complex, only because it is 100% affordable. And so we know we're all the funds is going to go to address low-income households. But for the HOAs, there are people of varying incomes that would be at that property. And so we don't want to what's the right word? We don't want to just give the money away. We want to make sure that it is being used to really address those who have the highest need. But we are limited in the kind of questions we can ask. We originally had thought about putting questions about the tenants or the residents at the HOA, but that information, we wouldn't be able to propel people to respond to those requests if we put it on the HOAs to do it. So we removed that requirement and decided to just leave it as a straight loan.
Thank you for answering that question. Is this, okay, so this is the one for HOA, it says ADA compliant. This is the part that I want to understand. You said that there were about 29 HOAs in Emeryville could be eligible for this program, potential eligible.
Correct.
HOAs for this program. Out of these HOAs, can you identify how many were pre-1992?
I would not have that information, unfortunately, no.
Okay, and another question is, this loan program for the improvements, the accessibility improvements, it is available to pre-ADA as well as ADA.
That is correct.
Okay, great. That is wonderful. I think this is something that this council has been working on for a while, to get ADA access or pre-1992 built condominiums or homeowners to have them the accessibility access. I'm encouraged by that, but I do have this same concern that the Housing Committee voiced or expressed about this going through board, and then maybe the timeline is not met, so the homeowner doesn't really benefit, or the person living in the condominium is hindered by maybe the red tape that is in their association. So is there any way that it can be made available without going through the HOA, or unfortunately that's something that just cannot be worked around?
When it comes to common area, the common area has to go through the HOA. If an individual homeowner living in a condominium project wants to do improvements to their interior unit, they don't need to go through the HOA. They would be able to apply like through the homeowner pool. But when it comes to common area improvements, because it's owned by the HOA has to be the borrower, and they would have to submit the application. Now, we have put into our guidelines that there is a requirement to get board approval. We wouldn't require board approval prior to them submitting the application. They just would have to demonstrate that they've received that approval prior to loan closing, so by that January 31st deadline. We did that specifically because, one, we can't control when boards meet, and we wanted to allow them some time. That would be that if we launched the program in July, they could ultimately have 6 months to get to the point of board approval. They still would have to have an application submitted during that application window, but actual board approval wouldn't have to be submitted until January 31st.
Thank you. I think those are the questions I have for now. If there's an opportunity later, I can ask more.
Any other clarifying questions? Yes.
Did I hear you right when you said 100% affordable building? In those instances, the loan could be forgivable?
Correct. We have currently designed it that the loan would be forgiven over a 10-year period. Part of the reason for that is because on the 100% affordable housing projects, they've received financing from a variety of sources, tax credits, state, federal funds. And so the improvements related to just common area improvements would be something that they could be funded, but we don't want to overburden the project, nor do we want to have to require them to go to all of those lenders and get approval for such a small loan amount, which is why we're making it a forgivable loan to hopefully address that issue of having to go to all of their other financing partners.
Do you think there could be a conceptual element that's consistent with that thinking where, say you have 20% below market rate units in a rental property or a HOA, and then say after 10 years, 20% of the loan is forgiven? Or does that overly complicate things?
That could be an option. That could be something. We didn't work through those type of numbers, but that could be something that we could consider. Or the council could consider, rather.
Do you think it would be useful or helpful for uptake if that's a concern of the council?
I think that's possible. Yeah, I think that opening up to our mixed income properties could provide more utilization of the program. That's definitely an option we could explore.
I'd like to know if the council has any thoughts on that modification.
Hold off on that for
Oh.
deliberation. Sure. Any other clarifying questions? All right, now's the time for public comment. Any member of the public that would like to make public comment on item 12.1 can do so now for 2 minutes. Going once, going twice. Public comment is now closed. Members, I now turn to you for deliberation on this item. Vice Mayor Mora.
I'd like to know if any members of the council have thoughts on this concept of forgiving 20% of the loan, for example, on a building that's 20% affordable. Something like that, conceptually.
Member Carr.
Thank you. I actually like that idea because that would increase the utilization or possibly increase the utilization. Additionally, I would like to add the pre-1992 HOAs to that if they meet the eligibility requirements for the homeowner, if they're 62 years of age or if they are low income living in that pre-ADA building.
If I could ask a question,
please.
So I just wanted to make sure that I'm clear. Are you asking whether or not pre-1992 condominium associations where there's an HOA, if we could also do a portion of their loan as forgivable based on the number of seniors or disabled residents? So we contemplated that. I think the question we got into is how do we determine that? How does the HOA determine that? Because we would get into the HOA having to go out and survey all the residents, and then it would be incumbent upon the residents to respond to that. So we opted not to go that route, but we did originally consider that as an option. We just got stuck in how do we get that information, because it would be incumbent upon all the residents to respond. And there's nothing we could do to force all the residents to respond.
So could we make it easier by just opening it to pre-1992 buildings? Without having the survey, just open it?
Make it so that 19 buildings built prior to 1992 could automatically get a forgivable loan and not have it be
Correct. It could increase the utilization of the funds.
I think that's possible, but I think I would need to defer. I need to talk with some of my fellow team members to think whether or not that's feasible.
What do you think would be the hurdles to feasibility?
We still wouldn't have to have the loan agreement signed by the HOA. Right now, I don't know that I can come up with any direct feasibility issues. I'm just, the idea of just segregating the pre-1992, that had not been thought of. So I just hadn't had time to really kind of think through it.
If not like a priority, I'm not saying that this, the pre-1992 should be prioritized, but I'm thinking that because they don't have that, or potentially would have more accessibility issues than the buildings built later or improved after 1992, I think it would just be something that would give them an additional way to, or additional way to get the money or be incentivized to get the grant or to push it through their red tape faster if they have this incentive. So I'm fine with whatever needs to be discussed, or if this needs discussion among the council members or wherever.
Any other comments? Member Pyforce?
Yeah, I mean, if you made the motion, I'd go for it. Yeah, I think ultimately what you're asking about is creating more opportunity for loan forgiveness. I think the probably is a question of the exhaustion of the funds. If there's more opportunity, less sort of bottlenecking. But at the same time, because I don't think it's extreme. I think it kind of does create like a middle way, because my prediction is that the way that we're approaching it, that there will be a lot of funds that will be underutilized. And I think that what you're trying to do is optimize the utilization.
Definitely, definitely. So yeah, if I could do that and add that in, if we are to make a motion, I would like to do that in order to, I think council member has another question before I do that.
Valerie, how does that work if you still need to discuss some items? If there was any type of adjustment made to those guidelines, how would that impact you all moving forward?
So we've written the guidelines in a way that the city manager can make adjustments to the guideline as needed to meet program objective and timelines. And we did that specifically because if it is underutilized, we are going to need to pivot quickly and be able to make adjustments to the program. So I think we can still move forward because in the guidelines and in the resolution, it is providing the city manager that authority to make changes as needed to meet the objective.
So with Councilmember Carr's concern, as far as the underutilization concern, if it comes up, you have there's an option available that can be utilized to make that more accessible. Okay.
Correct. And again, we included in the application a space for everybody to identify if they needed an exception to a rule. So let's say that there was a homeowner who needed to do something, they got in their quotes, and the loan is $15,000, but it's going to cost $17,000. They could ask for an exception to get the additional funding to do it, and then it would be based off of our evaluation, and at the city manager's approval, we could potentially provide somebody over the max limit if we needed to, especially if we were underutilized and we had funding that was still sitting out there that needed to be expended.
Okay. Yes, Councilmember Carr, and then
Thank
Vice
you.
Mayor Moore.
Earlier this year and last year, we had tried to prioritize, this council had tried to prioritize, or at least some members in this council had tried to prioritize the pre-ADA buildings. And that's why I would be more comfortable in having a motion today on that versus deferring it to a manager, a city manager, so that those buildings have that option, because that was something that has been on the table where I think back in July, I had raised this as a future agenda item to have an ordinance that would specifically address the pre-ADA buildings. So since we have the funding now, I think that it should address those buildings. And I think the funding would have more utilization if we were to put that in our motion today versus having further discussion about it.
I just have a brief question. Sure. Sorry, could you explain the 1992 restriction as it relates to this program? Because I'm a little unclear on what that restriction is. Unless is pre-1992 just exempt?
So I'm not the expert. I can only tell you a little bit, and I may have to defer to the city manager or to Chad Smalley, but my understanding is that the accessibility building requirements came into effect in 1992, which is why buildings that were built prior to that don't have the same accessibility requirements that you'll find in buildings today or those that were built after 1992. In 1992 is when that got added into the building code. So those older buildings don't have the same accessibility requirements for things that were built after 1992. Is that, am I, yes.
So, just real quick, the concern is that the buildings clearly built before 1992 would have the issues around accessibility versus the ones after. So what Councilmember Carr wants to do is to make sure that the buildings that were built before 1992 are utilizing this program to change whatever needs to be changed to make it, whatever changes need to be made to make it more ADA accessible, that they are prioritized for this program. She wants to make sure that they know about it, that it is
Easier for them to
easier
use,
for
I
them to
also
utilize it. That is what her concern is, that they're not going to, it's not going to be utilized by them the way they need to, and they should be prioritized because they obviously do not have those requirements. So there are probably very few that would have them, because why would they have them unless someone had taken upon themselves prior to make the changes, but of course they're not required to. So people often don't really necessarily, unless they want to, and some people have, but many probably have not.
Right now, the only mentions of 1992 in the actual program details, it's that projects constructed before 1992 without substantial updates, they score higher. So aren't they already being prioritized? Or am I misunderstanding that?
No, so there is a prioritization in the evaluation of the application. My understanding, I believe, is that Councilmember Carr wanted to ensure that they applied, so the idea of it being maybe more of a forgivable grant for them would make them more likely to participate in the program.
Councilmember Carr, does that explain what your point was?
Thank you. Yes, Valerie, it does. And I also wanted to clarify that that whole purpose of that study session that we had around an ordinance addressing the pre-1992 buildings was because they did not have a recourse under ADA, or they didn't have a recourse under FIHA. They had a recourse only under trying to sue or get a lawyer to represent them. So people who are aging in place either don't have the time to do these things or the inclination, because they don't know how long they're going to be around, whether the litigation is going to take more than their lifetime. So this is something that would prioritize the, or make this thing more accessible to those buildings, because they would be more likely to apply for it, versus if it's a forgivable loan versus going through the red tape, HOA, and giving the loan back, especially because this is a grant given by the government.
So to be clear, all the way clear, even if the loan is forgivable, the HOA is for the common areas. The HOA would still need to be the applicant. So that is still going to be in place. But if I'm understanding you correctly, you are asking for the program guidelines to be adjusted to state that pre-1992 developed HOAs, it would be then a forgivable loan for them.
Correct.
Okay.
So that's special treatment. This is we're asking for not exemption, but rather special treatment for pre-1992 versus just why even, like, how about we just don't discriminate against pre-1992?
We already discriminate against pre-1992 because they don't have that. They don't have what post-1992 has. So they are already imbalanced. They already have a barrier to that access. The whole purpose of that ordinance and study session was to break that barrier, and now we have that. Now we have an HCD grant to help us do that, and that's what I'm trying to move forward with, so that the buildings in the city of Emeryville that don't already have the accessibility that was implemented by 1992 to have that upgrade can do that more easily, so that this is more accessible. So
Would you like to make a motion?
I would definitely, but before I do that, I think Councilmember Pryforce has his hand raised.
Councilmember Pryforce?
Yes, can we pull up slide 14, Madam Clerk, please? And so I want to touch on your comments, Member Carr. Yeah, either 11 or 14. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, 11. Yeah, the one before. Yeah. But before I do, I have to comedically comment on the clip art that you used for affordable housing, Valerie. Like, it looks like for affordable housing represents folks like me. It looks like they didn't even pay their lights, right? Like, there's no sky. Like, there's, like, compared to the rest of the other clip art, like, it looks like Fat Albert lives here, right? Like, hey, like, this is bad. And so, it's pretty hilarious. And so let's get some better clip art for us affordable renters out here. And I promise you, Emeryville, that our affordable rentals are less good times and more the Jeffersons. I want to give a shout out to Member Carr and what you have strived to do. And I think that what happened during the whole study session is that the way that this program is set up, and I've been attending the meetings, the way that this session, this program is being set up, this will not advance those of us who live under slumlords or corporate landlords who don't really care about the accessibility unless they're forced to. And for dysfunctional HOAs, like there's going to be a certain, it rings a little elitism in terms of the folks who are going to be able to apply and the folks who are going to be able to really make their voices heard through this process. And so that's, I believe, what we were all trying to do is create some sort of legal standard, some sort of ordinance, some sort of way to force a lot of these complexes to be able to say, hey, we believe that these doors should open. We believe that these common areas should be be held to this standard, and then we can perhaps provide resources or support for you to get there. But we think that this is not good, and we want it to be better, as opposed to the determination is being made by those who are going to be applying. And so a lot of the folks who are, there'll be a lot of folks who won't be able to utilize this. And so I see where you're coming from. I believe that what your emphasis on the pre-1992 creates a little bridge. So it's not what we were trying to do earlier. And it's a little, it keeps the program as is, but it creates that possibility that more folks will be able to utilize it and more folks will be able to participate and hopefully be more empowered. But I believe that as it stands, there's still a lot of folks who won't be able to, I don't see our tenant union forcing our landlord to go, hey, apply for this, right? They're not going to apply, they're not going to do it unless they see some sort of benefit to them, and even then they'll, well, we don't got the time, or we're not interested, or it's just not an opportunity that they would take advantage of.
Any apartments that were built after 1992 already were required to have ADA accessibility. So if there is anyone living in a post-1992 building that doesn't have ADA accessibility, they need to report that to the city immediately. I would like to note that. Vice Mayor Mora, your hand was raised.
Yeah, just trying to bridge some of the concerns about the program uptake. I think a good balance would be, so I'd like to make a motion to approve the proposal as written, but give discretion to the city manager where if we need to move fast because we're not seeing people applying for these loans, to add the additional consideration that HOAs and apartment buildings can have their loans forgiven based on the percentage of affordable units. So if there was, for example, an apartment building with 20% affordable units, they might be more incentivized to get that money and make those improvements if they knew that there would be that 20% amount forgiven, so the money just goes to them. And I think the largest pool of applicants are likely to be pre-1992 folks who won't be discriminated against in the program. And it stands to reason that a majority of the awards would likely go to those, because that's where the most compelling needs are. So I don't think we need any specific language about the construction or the date of construction in the ordinance, or sorry, in the proposal. So that's my motion.
Was there a second?
I will make a substitute motion.
There's no second to the motion yet. I'll second the motion so she can make her substitute motion.
Okay, I would like to add to the resolution that has been written the fact that the pre-1992 buildings in Emeryville will have a forgivable loan within 10 years.
I second that motion.
Madam Clerk, we have two motions on the floor. Member Belders.
I just have a point of clarification for the motion maker. So we're forgiving their loan if they're building, there's just some specificity missing that I'd like to ask about, because we say built before 1992, there's a lot of things that could mean: certificate of occupancy, completion of construction. It's also not the exact date that the Americans with Disabilities Act took effect. There's also amendments to the ADA that happened. So I'm just looking for specificity. And I'm also looking to understand, you're basically asking that regardless of circumstances, any property that would be, I'll just call it pre-ADA at this time, okay? Any property that would be residential and pre-ADA, is your motion saying that regardless of transfers in ownership, it's forgiven?
I'm sorry, regardless of?
Transfers in ownership. So in other words, if we give the loan to you, right, and then you use that loan to improve the property and you sell it next year, we're forgiving that at the time of sale? So basically, I'm concerned about the exploitation of the program so that people...
Understood. And so I appreciate what you just raised, and I would not like to have that happen either, to have the program abused. So yes, I can make it more specific, and we can call it, instead of pre-92, pre-ADA, if that's something that everyone's comfortable with. I also would, if you are asking for more specificity, this would be for the common areas which could not be sold to the next resident within 1 year. It would always be those common areas.
Okay, so the motion will limit it to common areas. We'll call it ADA effective date, the effective date of the ADA, which I'm sure legal can tell us is a known date, right? We don't know it maybe, but it's a discernible date.
The date before ADA requirements went into effect.
Yes. And you're saying that you'll exclude, that it's forgivable, provided that the property doesn't transfer ownership prior to the 10 years. So if the building is still held as a condo or whatever, as long as it's not transferred to someone else for monetization, that's my concern. So if it's gonna continue with the same owner for 10 years and you want it to be forgivable no matter what, I'm fine with that.
I was limiting it to common areas.
Right,
So, but
right.
you still think that?
But still, you could be a building owner, condo owners, and the condo building can sell. The building can be transferred. The Bessler building was an apartment building that transferred ownership and became condos. The same can happen in other ways. So that's the clarification I'm seeking.
Good point. And yes, in that case, we can limit it to buildings that are not transferred during those 10 years.
That's fine. I understand.
Member Pryforce?
So my counter to that is that when these building owners, when they're taking out this loan, it's for this work to get done. And once the work is done, whether or not that person stays as the owner, the work still gets done. The common area is still made much more accessible. The problem with that is, for a building owner, the building owner has to think, am I going to sell this building or not? Well, I might, you know, because I'm thinking about like how business people think, right? And then they'll go, I may not want to take that risk. And so I may not want to take out this loan. So that's why I have an issue with that part. The pre-ADA part, I agree with, but in terms of the building owner, if it gets fixed, it gets fixed. If it becomes more accessible, it becomes more accessible. That's how I look at it.
Was there a second to my motion, or do I need to?
There was
Well,
a second.
can you state what your motion is now?
Yeah.
Yes, I will state my motion is that I would like to move the resolution with the addition of applying it to buildings that were that are pre-ADA. Before, City Attorney, did you want to give me the term, the exact legal term that I need to use?
I believe you wanted to indicate that there would be priority given to buildings that were built before ADA requirements went into effect.
Before ADA requirements went into effect, for the common areas, as long as that building does not change hands during those 10 years when the loan is going to be forgiven.
I second that motion.
Okay, I have a point of clarification with Mr. City Attorney. With the resolution, since there we have, if they both pass, then we are just accepting both. How does this working? So we have two motions that are actually stating two different things.
I believe there was a substitute
Yeah,
motion made.
okay. All right, Madam Clerk, we have a motion and second on the original motion. Yes.
This is a clarification on something, I think the understanding of ADA as we see it, because we're talking about apartment buildings and HOAs, which are, as private businesses, don't necessarily need to comply with ADA requirements. Is that correct? So take, for example, an apartment building like the Courtyards built in 2004 that maybe wants like an automatic door opener. Is that required to, I mean, as a private business, are they required to have that?
They're required to meet ADA requirements. Whether or not that means that you need to install an automatic door is something I think our chief building official would need to opine on, but you are required to comply with ADA requirements.
Okay, so we're basically saying apartments or is it just HOAs built before 1992 can have a fully forgivable loan, but we don't extend that to buildings built after, ADA time of effect. I just want to make it clear that that's what we're voting on.
Repeat yourself again.
I just want to make it clear that the substitute motion is to create a fully forgivable loan for HOAs that were built, so regardless of affordable housing composition, HOAs built prior to ADA effect are getting a fully forgivable loan, but we're not extending that to buildings built after 1992. So I just want to note that that's a huge departure from what was presented to us.
Can you explain, may I be recognized?
Yes.
I'm not sure I understand why it's a huge departure. I just want to hear what he has to say about why. Like, why is that?
Could we pull up the slide again?
It's just expanding. I think she's just asking to expand the priority for forgivable loans. That's what I'm reading that as.
Well, it is.
It's
not
being
a
exclusively given to, so.
No. She's adding a category. She's not substituting the resolution. Councilmember Carr, I don't wish to speak for you, but I just want to make sure I understand.
Councilmember Bowders, thank you for bringing it up because that's exactly what I was doing. The intent was not to make.
To get rid of the rest.
Yes, I was. The whole purpose was I'm moving the resolution with addition of this this item.
Every other property and every other priority is still there. It's just all she's asking for is that on the forgiveness for condo buildings that were pre-ADA effective implementation date, she's simply asking, right now it says less than 80% AMI forgiven in 10 years. She's asking it to add that, to bullet below that is what I'm understanding, to say it would be anything else that's also pre-1992.
You're looking at the homeowner line. The middle one is the HOA.
She's adding, so the bullet would go under, sorry, right, the second one. That's what I'm understanding.
So there's nothing forgiven for the second one currently, so that she's adding a special line that would just forgive the loan for buildings.
You're looking at me, it's her motion, that's what I understand it to be, yeah.
That is.
For affordable rentals, that's being forgiven in 10 years.
So I'm just adding that to the
Adding
HOAs.
it to the middle one.
That's it.
I'm
That's
pointing
all
to the
she's
wrong
doing.
box. She's just adding it to the middle one.
That's all.
But specifying
But
pre-1992.
limiting it to, and Valerie, correct me if I'm wrong, it's like pre-1992 HOAs is like 6, 5?
You didn't have those specific numbers.
I don't have that specific.
There's only a handful. I mean, it's like, it's Pacific Park Plaza, the Triangle, not the building, the Artistry, Watergate, like one other one. There's only like 4 or 5 HOAs that predate it, right? So I don't think she's not asking for a huge carve out of anything.
Nope.
It would be the only class of HOA eligible for a forgivable loan, right?
Yes, and if you could look at it from 2 ways, I'm not, this isn't even my cause, I'm just making the argument, I think, in defense of it. One is you could look at it, and I think her point has been, if the building was built prior to the ADA, they never had the benefit of the law requiring any of these features. Right. And so giving them the opportunity to access this grant program is an equity issue because it's giving them the ability to pay for this, and if they keep the building, stays occupied as an HOA for at least 10 years, then they have the opportunity to just have the loan forgiven, which is a benefit they're getting by virtue of being, 1, an older building, so it's more costly to retrofit, and 2, they've got the fact that they're getting an improvement that would otherwise not be there. And I could see your argument maybe, which is, you haven't said it, but the other side of it being, well, why exclude this class of buildings? I think the other thing is just that the others supposedly or assumptively have those things to begin with.
Exactly.
But the measure is not about bringing things up to ADA level, right? It's about any accessibility improvements.
I agree with you. It is not meeting ADA specifications, but it is providing benefits to buildings that inherently are degraded in value for ADA purposes because they don't have any of them potentially. I see value in it, personally.
I appreciate that. So we have.
Well, hold on.
I'm sorry.
I just wanted it to be clear what's being voted on, that's all.
Okay. Member Carr, do you have any other point?
No, thank you, Councilmember Bowders. You made it very clear about what I'm trying to accomplish here.
Okay. Member Pryforce, and then I'm calling for the vote. I think we've discussed this enough.
Yeah, I just want to make 2 points. One is that some of the buildings that were referenced by Member Bowders aren't HOAs, and it's really important that that we are utilizing language that is inclusive. That some of you are just apartments and they're renters. And so they don't necessarily have that kind of mobilization or organizing that HOAs have. And the other is that just because a building is ADA compliant, which has been like how this conversation I think really started, doesn't mean the doors open. Doesn't mean that the doors are too heavy for people who are wheelchair accessible. Doesn't mean that that the accessibility is at a standard that we apply to new buildings or buildings that have been recently built in Emeryville. So I just want to make those two clarifying points.
So HOAs do have tenants. You are able to be a tenant and still live in a building that is under HOA ownership. So that is a thing. And the question was which buildings were built before 1992, not specifically what are the HOAs. So that's why he was naming just buildings that were built before 1992, not necessarily referring to them as all HOAs. Madam Clerk, we have a motion and a second on the original motion by Vice Mayor Mora. The roll, please. What's wrong?
Wait.
No.
We do this, Mayor, we do the substitute motion.
Oh, the substitute gets called first.
Yes.
Well, sorry, it's late.
It's okay.
The substitute motion from Councilmember Carr. We have a motion and a second. The roll, please.
Councilmember Bouders?
Aye.
Councilmember Carr?
Aye.
Councilmember Pryforce?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Mora?
Nay.
And Mayor Welch?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right. Thank you for that lively discussion. Is there a department head report by any chance? Thank you. Item 14, future agenda item requests from council members. Any, Member Pryforce?
I'd like to make a future agenda item for the Medman business that shut down, that it created a gap in terms of cannabis businesses in Emeryville. And it also allows for an opportunity for us to create an RFP that focuses on a new cannabis business utilizing the same location. I've spoken to the owners who are interested in that. And they said that they also would be very open to the RFP focused on a BIPOC owner or a Black woman to receive support to have a cannabis dispensary business in that location. So I'd like to place that on a future agenda item to explore.
Mr. City Manager, is there something that you would like to add to that? There was, I know, some items that, on that matter, that you all were handling on the staff level. Is that correct?
Well, the main one is that that's a significant amount of work. So I do want to be clear about that. If that's something that the council is interested in, we would have to come back and let you know what we would pause or what the timeline on delivering that RFP for a second cannabis dispensary would be, but it would be a long timeline.
Could I propose an alternate approach, perhaps? Could we have an agenda item to look at how cannabis dispensary permits are given so that you don't necessarily need a city council resolution to recruit somebody, and then we could have a more streamlined process that is, so if the city's going to rework anything, it's not necessarily kind of ad hoc per cannabis business, and there's just a more cohesive approach.
So my concern with that is that that we could still end up having another white-owned cannabis business dispensary, that we're not actually intentionally looking at ways to promote for those who have been historically disenfranchised and criminalized because of cannabis. I mean, the White House just recognized that that we would be it would be a part of that sort of BIPOC initiative that the EDAC and others have been, I believe that they're trying to address as it relates to finding ways to create parity. And that's why, like, even being able to say a Black woman, so a woman and someone who may have been affected by, like, those are the kind of things that may come up in the RFP. So and to prevent more discussion, I'll keep it at that.
From my understanding, Mr. City Manager, the RFP process, and Councilmember Bowders, I know you were here during the time, there was an equity framework that was applied to the RFP process. Am I mistaken? Am I remembering that correctly?
I would defer to Community Development Director Chad Smalley, who was also here at that time and did
Yes.
work on this. I think he probably has the most history on it.
Yes.
Equity was a component, but not the main thrust of the selection process used the first time we selected a dispensary. So it was a component of the scoring and made its way into the community benefits packages that those selected operators proposed.
Would you be agreeable for this coming before Budget and Governance Committee?
Yes.
Is there any objection to that? Yes.
I vote against this item.
Okay. Is there, then moving it back to future agenda item requests. Mr. City Manager, you were stating the time capacity for staff, so what would you need to be able to bring this back to potentially be a future agenda item?
I need to talk with the Community Development Director. I think for us to bring it back, the whole process for the RFP is going to be a long process. So, question is, when would we bring something back to this council to even consider? It wouldn't take us that long to put together a timeline and some thinking behind it. It wouldn't just be the timeline, though. It would be the question of what's the economic benefit to the city, do we think? Do we think it's big or small? Don't know. So it would be more than that. So I would say, I don't know, probably October.
Okay. So this is sounding like it's not going to be something that's going to, yes.
Well, I'm just wondering do we have, did we ask who's in support of?
We got to vote against, which is pretty odd, but yeah, there's no second.
No one's voting against, hold on. Everyone, let's calm down. So who would be agreeable to bring this as a future agenda item, perhaps in October?
Sure. I can agree to that.
Okay, 3 votes, so we'll have that as a future agenda item. Anyone else with a future agenda item request? Member Pryforce.
No one else has a future agenda item?
I do, but you can just keep going.
No, you go ahead.
No, please go. You can keep going.
So you want to go after my pledge
Yes,
of
I will
allegiance?
go last. I'm the mayor, I will go last.
Okay. In the spirit of Juneteenth, I'd like the Pledge of Allegiance to return to this chambers, which I will demonstrate. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And once again, I removed the under God to make it more amenable to those who were against the Pledge of Allegiance.
Is there a majority support to place the Pledge of Allegiance as a future agenda item? No? Yes, Vice Mayor.
I just wanted to bring it back to the future agenda item kind of related to the MedMen, but without the, so I think we have the support bringing for the specific MedMen instance RFP. I'd like to know if this council is interested in looking at how the city does these RFPs for specific instances of cannabis businesses and whether that should be reevaluated.
To add to that future agenda item?
I'd like to handle, I think they should be talked about together, because if the
I believe it would be. There would be a breakdown on what was decided prior to, because I think Member Bowders is the only one that was here. But so could that also entail some background on how RFPs decisions were cultivated at the time, or just period?
I think that's separate, isn't it?
What I need everyone to please, I know we're a little lax today, please raise your hand if you'd like to be recognized to speak. Vice Mayor.
So I do intend for it to be, for the process to be discussed separately from this instance, but they could be grouped together because they're obviously related. And if you change the process, maybe that affects how you proceed with this instance.
Member Carr?
The future agenda item that we just agreed to was it was specifically related to MedMen. Is that correct? To having them get another tenant or go through the RFP? Is that
No.
what we, okay.
No, for the RFP process itself. I know, but that's, I mean, that's the one that's available. So it's specifically that cannabis license is the one that is available. So, yes.
Clarification. So the item that just was approved for future agenda was RFP for MedMen, correct?
So do you want to clarify,
Yeah,
Mr.
so
City Manager?
I'm not thinking of it as we're bringing back an RFP for that. What we're bringing back is information for like a study session, basically, to discuss. Here's how long it would take, here's what would have to happen, here's what we would have to think about putting on hold, here's what the timeline would look like, all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
Okay, so I think the study session has already been done previously, and all that data is available. That was discussed previously. So what I thought I was approving or raising my hand to was specifically for MedMen, not for a study session that I believe Councilmember Bowders has already been a part of, and that whole process has already been discussed. It has already been fleshed out. All the data is in the minutes before. So I'm not asking for a repeat study session of that.
So then are you then taking away your vote?
Was that I thought I was just approved in October I was raising my hand for an RFP for MedMen based on the criteria that's already available. That's already been fleshed out by the council members before us.
No.
Or before me.
Are you thinking that they were applying for a cannabis license? Is that what you're asking?
I think they already have a license, but they are trying to get someone to.
Mr. City Manager, do you want to add some light on that?
I mean, all I can say is what I said before, which is that my understanding of the future agenda item was to bring back information for a study session to talk about what would it take to renew the second cannabis dispensary at the MedMen property. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm taking my vote back because I didn't agree to that.
Okay, so then it was 2-3. So then it will not be a future agenda item. My future agenda item is for a study session to amend the ordinance for the encroachment permit to allow little libraries in the right-of-way. There's a very similar ordinance, there is a similar ordinance in the city and county of San Francisco that allows little libraries in the public right-of-way. And so given some of the public comment earlier regarding just the value that they bring to our community, unfortunately, they are not technically allowed at this time, and I feel like that is an injustice. And many of our community members have gone out of their own way to allow little libraries either on their own property or have taken the time to put them up, and I feel like they are a great benefit, and I think that there should be some allowance for them in our city, and of course, we just would have to review it and make the adjustments necessary. And so that is my future agenda item request. Is there support for that?
Thank you so much for doing that.
Yes.
Can I just ask a clarification about the future agenda item I made regarding the process? Did that fail? Did it get the votes?
No.
No, it never came up, so, because I would have said yes. Yeah.
So you can go ahead and do that. I'm sorry.
No, it wouldn't. So we're not doing that at all. Or did you?
So I made a future agenda item. This is to look at the cannabis license process and not just in the specific instance of MedMen. So how the city deals with that process for new cannabis licenses.
So that is your future agenda item request?
Yes.
Is there a majority support for that? Okay, so Director Smalley, do you have guidance on how to bring
I'm going
that
to
back?
suggest that we combine those two agenda item requests because they're very closely related.
Perfect.
Okay. Madam Clerk, the time is 9:39 PM. This meeting is adjourned.
Recording stopped.